Kent. I'm on the good hand with Bob Stoney, and shut up.
Thanks, Theo.
All right, well, welcome. A couple admin things. Sign up sheet. Please make sure you get your name on this, particularly if you're a pilot. And so after you. All right, so here's the plan. Here's the plan for today. We've already done this. You got a squadron meeting done. You got your. I'm going to cover some administrative stuff, more administrative stuff, and then we're going to get into actual training on the airplane. This is a yearly requirement for the pilots. As Logan mentioned, if you're not a pilot, you don't have to have this, but if you are a pilot, you must have this yearly. It's basically the same as last year. I'll tell you that there's two or three things that we're focusing on. So my strategy on this is I'm going to go faster and funnier. I'm just going to start going, but I need you, especially if you're not a pilot or new here, stop me if I say something. Don't let me go past it. Don't let me rush you. I'm basically trying to just not spend too much time with the folks that have had the material before. We are going to do an open and closed book test after the systems training. That's also a requirement, only for the pilots, but everybody's welcome to join. There'll be a break in here. We'll get up. Then we're going to do some maintenance training, the prop lube and how to fill the oil and that stuff from Logan. Then we'll come back and talk a little bit about Rally Point, which is our time tracking, and it's only for the ops side. There's a maintenance side to Rally Point, and some of that's changing. Not talking about that today. Just talking about the ops side, a couple of things that are particularly important for pilots. And then Duke will get up here and talk about crew resource management, or resource management, and that is also a requirement. So we're hitting a lot of wickets today, of things that CAF headquarters makes us do. And then we'll wrap up at the end. It's going to be about 4 hours. So if I neglected to put out an email saying bring a lunch, so I'll just apologize now if you get a sugar high from the cinnamon rolls. If you absolutely need to go grab something to eat, we'll do that and maybe stop. We'll figure it out as we get into this. So anything we need to add? Any questions on the plan for the day? All right. Here's our agenda for systems. I'm going to talk to you about some of the references that are available to pilots and non-pilots. A little bit of history of our airplane. Then we'll go through all of the different systems that are in the airplane. Then we'll do normal procedures and emergency procedures. And then, as I mentioned, the test. So here's the references. And particularly if you're a pilot, you should have these saved to your computer somewhere, if not printed out. They're all available on the Google Drive, which is currently only available to the staff. But if you need a copy of any of this, just shoot me an email, tell me, I'll write down a note. I'm happy to email you anything that you don't have that you need, okay? So the first thing is the type certificate data sheet for the airplane. Not intended for you to read that, but the TCDS was issued to the airplane after World War II to make it a civilian airplane. Every certified civilian airplane has a TCDS, and it's got a number of limitations on it. We'll talk more about that later, but there's a good information in there, and you should look at it at least once. Then there's this pilot's flight operating instructions. This is the Army manual, the Army Air Corps manual, tech order. There's the number, and it was what was given to pilots in World War II to fly the airplane. There's a copy of it in the airplane. It is marginally helpful. It's got obviously a lot of stuff that's wrong. It may be more correct for our restoration project here, which is a World War II vintage type configuration. And there's also a lot of things that have changed in aviation. So it talks about things that are like limitations, but they're not. We'll talk more about that. Then there's the pilot's information manual, okay? The PIM, and that is locally produced, and I'll talk more about what that means when we get into the limitations section. But this is a locally produced document. It also has checklists in it. There's laminated copies of the checklists that are in the airplane, and that's intended to be the way that we operate the airplane, both normal and non-normal. They're all available on the Google Drive, but again, if you don't have access to that, just let me know and we'll get it to you. Okay, a little history on our airplane. It's serial number 77333, and it was called FB 605. When it was in, if you notice, most British airplanes, I think all of them, British military airplanes have 2 letters and 3 numbers. Every single one of them. I guess they don't have enough airplanes to run out of combinations, but our airplane was built in 1944 at the Consolidated Vultee. So it's a Stinson airplane, but it was built at the Consolidated plant. And that was very typical in the war. Whenever there was some capacity in manufacturing, different plants from different manufacturers, there was no rice bowl action. It was, hey, we got some capacity coming up on our line. We'll build some of your airplanes. And so our airplane's an example of that, built in Wayne, Michigan. And there's the U.S. Army Air Force serial number, 4344046. It was given to the UK, brand new airplane, given to the United Kingdom as part of the Lend-Lease program, which you remember was our way. That was particularly important in the beginning of the war, when there was a lot of isolationism, not wanting to help Europe, let them take care of their own problems. We're not going to help them. And so President Roosevelt got this, okay, we're gonna make money off of these guys, so we're gonna lend them this airplane and they'll pay us back later. That was the pitch, and it was successful. It convinced enough people to allow us to produce and give arms to Europe. And I think, I'm not a historian, maybe Evan can help me, but I think it clearly was the right answer, or else we'd all be probably speaking German right now. It was ferried to New Jersey, disassembled, put on a ship, and shipped to India. Royal Naval Air Squadron, NAS, Colombo, Ceylon, in Sri Lanka. That's where it was sent initially. It was assigned to the 742nd NAS, which was one of the active communication squadrons. And we think that was one of the squadrons that it may have been assigned to. We actually don't know much detailed history. It's not like we have all of the records from the airplane's military service. We don't. I'll bet it exists somewhere. Every year when I give this training, I stand up here and I hope to energize somebody to do the work. The Brits have amazing records in England. I'm sure the Indians have it. There's records somewhere of exactly every flight this airplane went on. We just haven't found it yet. We don't know it. So if anybody's really into digging into history and learning stuff, here's a project for you. That squadron moved later on to this location down here. And we're not sure exactly what it did, but and it did arrive there quite late in the war, March 1945. The war ended in August, I think. So that's part of the war, August of that same year. So not sure exactly what it did or what kind of service it had. But this, by the way, our treasurer, Dave Woody, put all of this stuff together. He did a great job. And he did some history on a kind of a sister ship, FL 127. That's a picture of it there. And you'll see that it has a wooden propeller, which I'd never heard of until he dug this up. So Urco propeller, I guess it was just part of that deal where there wasn't enough metal. They needed metal for bullets and whatever. And so they tried this wood propeller. I'm not sure I personally would fly that. And here's some of the other airplanes that squadron flew besides our 1819. And so I think this should be our goal for our squadron, is to have one of each of these. Who's with me?
See how they might have difficulties.
After the war, it came back to the U.S. It was turned into a V-77 civilian airplane. V for VIP. They tried to market up these ex-Army airplanes as kind of like I guess a Cirrus would be the current thing, or maybe a Meridian or something like that.
Don't compare it to a Cirrus.
Yeah. Is Meridian okay? I don't know. There's no airplane as good as it, so I don't know what to compare it to. And it was given, it was issued a new serial number. It was I don't know the history up until '85, but in '85 the Commemorative Air Force purchased it, and it served long with the Carolina Wing, and then it was assigned in 2015 to the Coyote Squadron down in Texas. They only had it for a relatively short time when it was transferred to us. The plank owner Logan, Dave, who else was a plank owner in the squadron? Yeah, that's here. Sorry? Smokey, yeah. John Johnson, Ron McElroy got this thing going, and Pete. It was Pete. Yep, Pete Jackson. Where is Pete?
He can't because of his knee surgery.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah. It was not an easy first couple of years. These guys worked really hard, so thank them for their hard work. Particularly Logan. The airplane was not it flew here, but it was not legally airworthy, and so Logan and John Smutney and others basically stripped the airplane. Went totally through the airplane, figured out what needed to happen, and did the work. And so it was grounded for over a year. Yes. Well, they got it right, and Logan talked about safety at the beginning. He lived that by not letting this thing continue to fly. He said, "Nope, this is not good. We're not flying it. We're going to fix it right." The brakes, for example, took a bunch of money to buy an STC, etc. So hats off to the plank owners of this squadron. So that's the history of our bird. All right, let's get into the systems training. The airplane's big. It does not fit into a typical single, even though it's a single engine airplane, it doesn't fit into a single engine T-hanger. It's just a little bit too wide, 41 foot, 10 foot span. Sometimes the height gets you. 9'10" or 9'2" is a pretty tall airplane. You can see it. It's a big monster. It's a 4-place. It's got the gull wing, which is this, kind of see it. It's not a gull wing like the Corsair, but it does have a change that's noticeable visually, and you can see the wings kind of swooping in toward the fuselage. And it has a single 9-cylinder engine, R680, built by Lycoming, that we will talk more about. The front seats are adjustable. They slide forward and aft. The rudder pedals do not adjust. There's no other adjustment of any control. The rear seat, which has 2 passengers back there, is a bench seat. Lap belts at all 4 stations. Lap belts only. There's no shoulder straps. There's a roll down window on the left side. This is a test question, so pay attention to that. And then there's one way in and one way out, a single entry door on the left that you'll see. And it's got gaspers and cabin heat that is reasonably effective. Here's an instrument, a picture of the instrument panel for reference. We'll get back to more of this. It is VFR only. It sort of looks like it might be IFR-ish, but it is not. And there's controls on both sides for each pilot. And we'll talk more about some of the other controls here in a bit. Okay, R680. So for those that aren't familiar, all engines are coded with a set of letters and digits. The R means it's a radial. If it was a O, that would be horizontally opposed. V, 680 is the cubic inches. Yep. So it's 680 cubic inches, and the dash 13 is just like a series number, as improvements were made. It's a direct drive 9-cylinder, air cooled. That's why it's a radial, is to get all of that, all the cylinders exposed to the air. And it's 300 horsepower. I don't have that up there. 300 horsepower, takeoff at like 285 max continuous. The controls for it are the throttle, the mixture. There's a primer, which is right here. It's got carb heat, and then it's got a mag switch. So those are the controls that control that engine. There's also a propeller, obviously. We'll get to that control in a second. And just stop me if you have any questions, please. So here's our propeller. It's a ham standard 6135. And what does that number mean? And I don't. Is it just a number, or does it mean anything?
often it can be the length of each blade.
Okay.
And the pitch of the blade, the maximum pitch of the blade.
Okay.
I'd have to look and see if the being older, it may be different. Normally, you've got
That, okay.
length in pitch.
Length and pitch, okay. It is a constant speed propeller. You can see the prop flyweights here, and there's a governor mounted. I think it's visible. It's right there. And it's got this hub. I don't know that number is important, but I think there's a picture of the prop governor. So that thing uses engine oil to change the pitch to hold the RPM constant. And it doesn't work on the ground. Like you can't get 2,200 RPM on the ground and that power, for example. It has limits to how much it can change the RPM, but it does its best to its maximum blade angle, minimum blade angle, moving it with oil pressure to keep the RPM constant. Typically, it'll take off at 2,200 RPM is max continuity. You can also reduce it below that when you're cruising 2,300 per day. And it's controlled by the blue knob here, which is a vernier type control. See this knob here? You can rotate it and it'll come out, rotate it, and go in, where you can push the button and you can make it more gross adjustment too. Same thing with the mixture. You can see the throttle is not a vernier control, it's just straight push it forward. There's a pre-flight item. This is a close-up of the prop flyweights, and there's a pre-flight item to make sure that they're greased, and you get training on that later. All right, fuel system. You got some training aids here. There's 2 wing tanks. One, you can see the shape of them, pretty interesting. I'm not sure exactly why it's shaped that way. You know, like a typical one is more rectangular. Something structurally having to do with this member here, I guess. And it was enough gas. There's 76 gallons total. There's a fuel sump at the bottom of each of those wing tanks, as well as underneath the engine, just half of the engine. It's the low point drain system. There are gauges in the cockpit. They're useless. Don't trust them. Don't look at them. There's a switch for them. I'll make sure you turn that switch on. I'm not sure why, but it's useless. Please do not use the gauges. We have dipsticks available. Do we even have the old dipstick anymore? I haven't seen it. Get that in there. We had a dipstick for a while that where you dip it and it gave you a number. The number didn't mean anything. And then you went to a chart, which I believe is still on the door, and you would convert. And from the number on the stick to the chart, then somebody, was it Simon? Somebody, I think it was Woody. Woody's like, why don't we just mark the stick with gallons? And we're like, if you've ever heard the story of the Gimli glider, the 767, where they converted from like kilograms to pounds to gallons to I don't know. They ran out of gas because they screwed up that conversion, and it was ripe for that. It was definitely it was a chance to screw up. So the new stick, here we go. Thanks, Al. Here's your new stick, and this is the gallons one. So it's got gallons in there. And when I train the pilots, we make sure that we get it all the way to the bottom of the tank. There's structure in the tank. Like, let's say the bottom of the tank's here, and there's some structure there, and it'll hang up on that structure, so you'll read less. Well, it's conservative, but got to feel around and make sure you get to the bottom, kind of tap it, and you pull it out, and you can read the gallons. So this is your gas gauge here.
And when you put it in there, don't drop it in, and every time that goes down, into the middle of the bottom of the tank, make sure you put the seat there and crack it. So, careful. And also, you'll get a splash on it. It'll give you a false reading. So bring it down slowly in there. That's not great point.
You hear that? I didn't bring him on that. Now you don't. Now we almost.
That's one tell me. I watched you do.
Here's the chart. So like 3.0 is 23 gallons. And yeah, and there was no gallons for some of the reason. It was crazy. I don't know. It was very British. Very British. I think it's probably the Carolina. I don't know who made it. Okay, so there's a fuel selector. That's typical fuel selector, like in your Cessna. It's got left on, right on, or both of them. Right?
No.
No? Oh, shit. Oh, you're right. There's two positions down there, and they both say both off. So there is no both position. So if you look down there and you see both, and you think, oh, like my Cessna, there's a bad habit transfer. You're going to put that thing in both. Might be right before takeoff. The engine's still running. So the fuel line, it's a chance to screw up. So really be careful. Either left or right only. No off. And to my knowledge, we never turn that thing off except in an emergency. When I train, we're not turning it off after flight. Here's a diagram of it. This is an aux tank that I guess was available. We do not have that. But you can see some of the major components in here. We got a primer, we got an engine-driven fuel pump, we got the fuel sumps, and then of course the fuel lines supplying pressure. A little bit more about the fuel, the prime. There is a primer. It's a little, once you figure it out, it's not bad, but the first 2 or 3 times you use it, it's like you're fighting it. Just have to push it in gently, slightly turn it, bring it out, wait for it to fill up, push it in. Checklist tells you how many times to push it in. And the fuel goes into these top 5 cylinders. There's little brass lines on the engine. You can take a look at the engine. So where is your engine? So that's how the engine is primed for start. All right, anything on oil, fuel before we get into oil? All right, the capacity of the oil system is 4 1/4 US gallons. There's a tank located here. This is looking back on the airplane. That's the firewall, and it's mounted, and the engine's right here in front of it. Of course, it's got breather lines and supply lines. The minimum is 2.5 US gallons. There's a dipstick in it, and that dipstick is only accurate after the engine's been run. Basically, the quantity is good for about an hour. I've forgotten where that number came from. I don't think it's really right. It's more like half an hour. So I've seen it go down. You want to check it right after shutdown. And there's a procedure for us to check it. Like if we go fly it today, it hasn't flown in a week or 2. We're going to fire it up, let it warm up, get the oil in the right place using the prop lever, shut down and read it, because it's not accurate right now. All the oil kind of drains down in the system. So we're going to talk more about the dipstick here in a little bit, thanks to Duke. Flight controls. The pitch is done via elevator, so you can see them right there, a little horn on it. The cable actually goes to the right yoke, and then a transfer or a torque tube transfers it to the left. There's trim in the overhead, and it's like this. And I think that's nose up, but I'm not sure.
But it's labeled.
I
look every time, so.
I'm below 50-50. I just turn it, and if it's wrong, I turn it the other way. It's not a good ergonomic design. No, it would not pass current human factors regulations. The good news is you can fly the airplane all day without even using the trim. And I when I'm training guys, I see a real tendency to over trim. You know, some airplanes need to be trimmed quite a bit. This one really doesn't. So when we're flying, you may hear me say to you, hey, you don't need to. How about try, it's kind of getting in the way of flying the airplane because you're turning it the wrong way, which I totally understand. We get roll via ailerons, one on either side. You can see it right there. There's cable. Everything's cable. And in this case, there's no trim in the cockpit. There's a ground adjustable tab. It's located, I believe, on the right aileron. And then yaw is also cables back to the rudder. You can see it. You can see the ground adjustable tab sticking off the back right by Mark's head. Secondary flight controls, brakes. The brakes are hydraulic. That's the only thing hydraulics are used for in the airplane. So brake reservoir just kind of like in a tractor, and brake pedals with the cylinders on them. To the main wheels, one on each side, and the brakes are in the left seat only. There's a parking brake. I'll talk briefly about that. The tail wheel, see it back there, is fully castered. There is no steering of it. If you know much about tail draggers, most of them either lock or steer. Some of them both. This one's neither. It does not lock and it is not steerable. It just has at it. It's a solid rubber tire. I notice our restoration project's got an air tire. So we're going to come, you'll hear me talk more about the tail wheel and the brakes here, I think, in a little bit. Okay, the flaps are controlled by a small lever. The detents on this lever are not good, so you basically just look at the, line it up there and then line it up with the P. And those are powered by a vacuum system. Pretty interesting. The manual talks about them being able to can be raised slowly in a glide with the aid of the detent spring on the face of the valve, and I still don't know what that means. I don't know what the detent spring. It's kind of like if you pushed it, but this is what's in the manual, and I don't know what it means. So it's basically, the way I describe it is it's either up or down, and no intermediate position is available, and its use when the engine has failed is questionable because it's a vacuum powered system that comes off a vacuum pump off the engine. And this is also from the manual. Care must be taken when performing a go around from a low altitude. That's why we train that. Here's a picture of the flight controls from the parts manual. It's all cables, all manual, reversible. There's that cross tube for the pitch. So the cable actually comes into the right yoke. This is the right yoke here, and then goes across on the tube to the left. Rudder pedals. They're linked by crossbars, and the left seat has toe brakes, but the right seat does not, and they can't be fitted because it's an inch narrower. Logan tried really hard to find a place where we could get brakes for the right seat. I've asked almost every Reliant owner I've ever met, have you ever heard of brakes for the right seat? And the answer is no. And if you're wondering why I'm asking that, it's because there's no way to steer the airplane from the right seat other than aerodynamically. You can move the rudder, but you have no brakes and you have no tail wheel steering. Nobody does. So you're really limited in your authority. So imagine if there's much wind or if the airplane starts to go one way or the other, you have very limited authority. So it's an extremely difficult airplane to teach in because the instructor at some point needs to get in the right seat. And that's why the training program requires that you demonstrate proficiency in the right seat first. So I or another instructor's in the left seat. So we've got full authority. You got to do it in the right seat first, and then I'll move you over to the left seat. And we're going to kind of take that easy too. I got to kind of build up process to make it safe. There is a parking brake, a handbrake over on the left side, but you can read this note from Logan that basically the thing doesn't work. We don't need it. A lot of people never even use parking brakes in airplanes where they work. But for right now, the parking brake is inoperative. Here's that flap system. Pretty interesting. So vacuum pump down on the engine. There's a accumulator that's located behind the cabin. Yes? Yeah. And then it's got lines that go up to these little actuators, one in each wing. And I think it's not a push rod, it's a pull rod because it's a vacuum system. So it's got vacuum on one side of a hydraulic cylinder. And that moves the flaps up and down. Pretty interesting.
You can actually see that vacuum tank.
Yeah.
Back on 768.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, when we take a break, go take some of the systems knowledge I've been talking about, look around the airplane that doesn't have any skin on it. You'll see there's some pretty cool stuff. Okay, so how did I get, when I heard the squadron had a Reliant, I got really excited because my brother owned this Reliant here for about 10 years in California, and I got to fly it about 100 hours and just love the airplane. It's like a Cadillac. You know, it's not going anywhere fast. It's not sporty, but just a graceful old gal. Amazing airplane. He sold that airplane to a rich guy in Belgium who had it totally redone, repainted. This is the airplane now. That's my brother's airplane now, and it's FB 775. So and you can see the Royal Navy. So it was. That's maybe a very similar, and I don't know the history of that airplane. I don't know if that's accurate or they just painted it that way, but I'm presuming the Europeans are really big on history. I'm presuming that the airplane had a war record similar to ours. Still N numbered, which is fascinating. In Europe, there's almost no freedom for private aviation. We have so much here that's amazing, and as a result, they just keep the airplanes registered, and they basically are dodging their rules somehow. I don't know the details, but there's a company that owns all of these airplanes and then leases them to private individuals to fly. And the company has got ties to the U.S. somehow. I don't know the deal, but it's fascinating that it's still N numbered. If you look it up online, November 1943, that was the year it was built. Sierra, November 1943 Sierra, you'll find it in this collection of about 50 warbirds that are operated over in Europe. All right, electrical system. It's 28 volt DC. There's a generator on a 24 volt battery. So pretty simple. We're going to talk about this is the electrical panel. It's like a sub panel in between the yokes. So let's go through these switches one at a time. The system itself is super simple. The first thing to notice is which way is on. You know, so in your house, you flip the switch up for on. Not in this airplane. You flip it down for on. Okay, so you bring it back towards you. So that's the first thing to remember. And I guess you'll figure that out when you can't hear anything. These are supposed to be ganged off together at the end of the flight. I don't know why. I think it probably has to do with avionics, tubes and stuff, so I doubt it matters, but we operate the airplane that way. We gang them together, the master, which is the battery, and the generator, turn them on. The nav lights and the strobe lights, we leave on. Just like they're shown, we leave them on all the time. Anybody know why we do that? That doesn't know why? Okay. Any guesses? Evan, why would we leave those lights on? Safety. How's it safe? That's a good answer.
People can always see it. The lights are on.
That's true. That's a good, yes, exactly. So when we turn the master on, we're already emitting lights so people know we're about to start. Excellent. That's right. And then at the end of the day, when we turn this off, we still leave that on. And we do that in case we forgot to turn this on. So if we always leave these switches on, and we turn this guy, and we get out of the airplane, and we forgot, we walk in, why is the light flashing? Oh shit, I forgot to turn them in.
One extra reason we also do that too is after rides, we have the aircraft on display. We'll have passengers going in and out. A lot of times we'll have little children come in, touch things. If you're outside the aircraft, all of a sudden you get the strobe show starts going. We know that someone's hitting the panel.
That's excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. So there's at least 3 reasons that we leave those guys on. We do not touch them. Fuel gauges. We leave that switch, or we turn that switch on and off. I don't know. But the fuel gauges are useless. Yeah. Excellent. All right. And then the landing light we don't use. It's we don't use it. It's not in good shape. If we use it, it'll break. We don't use it.
It's a retractable type.
It's a retractable light over on the left wing. Yeah.
Commonly have problems.
Yeah.
And they are, if they break, you can have your aircraft grounded. So we don't use it because you can't get parts for them, the old Grimes parts. And if it's stuck down and whatnot, well, you can't do anything. So we could basically have our airplane grounded because of the stupid light.
Yeah. Yes. There's some other switches on there. The radio master is self-explanatory, and then the starter is has a cover to it. And be careful. It's easy to forget to put the cover down. It's also easy to inadvertently actuate the landing light switch. Although, do we have the power off to that now?
I'll double check, make sure it's still as it was.
Yeah, I think. And how did we do that? I forgot.
I disconnected it from the back.
Yeah.
Kept it, so.
Yeah, we had some inadvertent actuations of it. Trying to operate the starter, hands flipped and operated this, and so we had the light partially out. So, but just be careful when you're over. Okay, so electrical system. We've got this one here, and I don't know if you can see it. It's a cylindrical thing here. That's the oil tank, and then there's one. This is lower down, coming straight into the back of the engine. So electrical system. This is the generator or starter. Starter. I'm gonna guess generator. Let's see if I remember right.
That's correct.
Starter.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, we're generating oil. That's the way I remember it. All right. We've got some avionics in the aircraft. We have the books for them. They're pretty self-explanatory. I gave you 0 training on them, and there's some. If you really get into it, there's some buried stuff in here. Like the radio has a squelch control that's really buried. It's hard to find. We haven't turned all the way up because of the breakthrough problems we've been having. But otherwise, they're pretty traditional. And then there is an intercom panel. This can be a player sometimes when you're having too much squelch breakthrough, the ICS. So, yes, sir.
Another thing we maybe could play around with. I have a little bit of experience with the A220s from something else I volunteer with.
Okay.
And I believe it has a standby function where you can monitor, not standby, monitor function where you can monitor secondary frequency.
Oh.
So since we only have one radio, that might be handy to use, especially if we're flying more this summer into more complex airspaces.
All right. Your first assignment as a future instructor is to put together training material.
Yeah.
If we have it. And then a couple slides of how you get to it. So,
Yeah.
Good. I'm not familiar with that at all. So, good. Yeah, that'll teach you to speak. It does have ADS-B out, and we have the 1090 system as opposed to the 985. So, what does that mean? Anybody? What does it mean that we 1090? Is that good or bad?
We're in Canada.
We can go to Canada and we can go above 18,000 feet.
Okay.
All right. We've been almost an hour. Let's take a break and then we'll come back. Take 5, please, and come back and we'll get into limitations. We talked about systems. Now we're going to get into limitations. And the first question is, where do you find them? And the answer in your Cirrus or your current airplane is you go to the FAA approved flight manual, AFN. However, in our airplane, it's not that straightforward because we don't have an AFN. There are some in the PFOI. I'm going to give you an example of why that may not be the best place, but we can't ignore it either. So the TCDS is binding, but it's not necessarily consistent in the airplane, so you don't really have it to refer to, but there are some limitations on there that we follow. The gauges themselves are not necessarily consistent with the TCDS or the tech order, but we do follow the gauges that are correct. And we, if you're in a red on the gauge, you're in the red. There's a thing called a flight chart that has some stuff on it. This is in the tech order. And it's got some limitations or things that appear to be limitations, but it seems more like a performance thing in a current flight manual. It's super crazy. So what we do is we just take the most conservative and we put all of that into the PIM, Pilot's Information Manual. But for everybody that's a pilot in command, you got to understand that that PIM is not FAA approved. We're not operating under a operating certificate. If the CAF ends up being a 135, like people talk about, we may have a chance to make our PIM official. Right now, it's just a document that's designed to bring everything into one place. It's good gouge. Don't worry about it. It's been well reviewed, but just understand, legally speaking, it's not a legal document. So here are some limitations. 28 for takeoff, we go 28 inches, which is full throttle, at least up sea level. We don't ever go below sea level. 2,300 RPM, that's prop lever full forward. So this is both of the handles smashed full forward. Max continuous stays the same map. It goes back to 2,200 RPM. And so this is a 1 minute limit. So you need to bring the prop back. So that burn air control, just the SCOSI, within the first minute after takeoff. There is, this is from the tech order. It says avoid engine speed of 1,000 RPM on the ground. It's also in the flight chart that I showed you. It says it there. And so the question is why? And the answer is, I have no idea. I put out on Facebook, there's a Reliance or a Stinson page I put out there. Hey, anybody know what this is about? The only answer I got was vibration of the pitot tube. And when you look out there at 1,000 RPM, that thing does shake a little bit. So it might be that. So then you're going to go, okay, Bob, what? So 999 is okay, and 1,001's okay, but what are the limits on that? And I'm going to tell you, I don't know. So just trying to stay away from it. I typically run at like 900 or so if I'm trying to warm it up. Because there's another 1,000 RPM limit, which is that's max RPM until your oil is heated. And then, as I said, green is good on the gauges. So I'm not going to go through all those numbers. You do not need to memorize all those numbers. Green is good. All right, another engine-related limitation. This is again from the tech order. 5 minutes is usually enough to warm up. Mixture control remains full wrench. Once you get oil temp up to 85, it should be shut down and allowed to cool for 5 minutes. If it gets that high, we don't see that, so this one is no issue. And then under no circumstances, boy, that sounds like a limitation, doesn't it? Will the engine be allowed to operate more than 10 minutes on the ground without stopping? Okay, so let's dissect this stuff. That first part's cool. We don't follow the full rich thing. We lean the mixture to keep the plugs from fouling. Maybe, I don't know why. Fuel difference from fuel in 1988 clear fuel foul. Well, but why did it say that in World War II and now we don't follow it? I don't know. Maybe I don't know. But we don't follow it. So we don't follow it. We lean them. Our procedures have us leaning the mixture on the ground. And we do multiple full stop taxi max. We lean it every time. That one's good to go. And we do not follow this. It's nowhere in the TCDS. It's not on a placard. I think it's there because of the avionics that was in the airplane. My bird dog has a very similar sounding limitation in its Army manual, but it assumed a whole bunch of avionics sucking the battery thing. And if you're taxiing around too much, the battery, I've actually had it happen in my dog where the battery gets trained in a guy and go back on RPM and then pull the battery again, even with a regular avionic. So I think that's probably what it's about. Doesn't matter. We don't follow that limitation. There's no 10-minute. You see that in the manual and wonder why. Talk about it. So we do not treat that as a limitation. All right. There's 3 different VNEs depending on where you look: the gauge, the TCDS, and the book. But they're all too fast. So just stay away. I don't know how fast we've been in the airplane. Maybe on an unusual attitude, we get to 130 or 140, and it's scary as hell. So
I don't know how you even get close to that.
yeah, I think you'd die on the way there. I don't know. Just stay away. The flaps are a very interesting discussion. The flap speed. So the bottom line is before you put them down below 86. But once they're out, you can go up to 108 miles, and these are miles an hour. They get the airspeed gauge is miles an hour. Can't remember if I have another slide, but when we train, we'll talk a lot about that. It does have some impacts on how you feel. Here's an example of the problem with the tech order. This is an excerpt from the tech order. It says airspeed limitations. Best takeoff speed 50, 60 miles an hour. So if you take off at 65, you're violating the limitation. Of course not. And best climbing speed, but then there is a do not exceed 202. So that's obviously a limitation. So it's kind of weird. It's a mix. Bottom line, we put it all together in the pen. Use the pen. Max weight's 4,000. There's a CG chart. You can get out of CG. I used to say that it was almost impossible to get out of CG. And given a ride last year, there was a very large gentleman that wanted to sit in the back, so his wife was sitting in the front. And on my iPad, I got a profile for the airplane, and we're past the FCG lines. It's possible. So, however you want to do your weight and balance, do it. 2 people. It's pretty forgiving, but it's not bulletproof. So make sure you know how to do a weight and balance in case that weird situation comes up.
Did you actually fly? Okay.
No, oh God. No, he I think he didn't go flying. I offered him the front seat where he could go. He ended up not wanting to go. And unfortunately, I already had him in there, and I didn't realize how big he was. And I'm like, how much do you weigh? We're at the limit. And no, I don't fly the airplane out of the limits. I know some people do. I don't fly airplanes out of the limits unless I'm on a flight tip.
As the pilot, your ground people are being really cool about booking the flights and generally looking at it. Definitely double check the passengers, make sure the best configuration. If you have any concerns, mention it to us. The other thing too is on the back seat, you try to side by side put staggered weight as well too, so don't fall any people on one side.
And I haven't personally seen that. That's an issue.
Very
Here's some other SOP limitations. So these are things that the squadron says, boom, no acro. Maximum wind of 15 knots. And you're going to start asking me if that gust or steady. Start asking me a lot of hard questions. I'm going to say this. I don't know. And then you're going to ask me, what do I do if the data says it's 16 knots? Do I bingo somewhere else? We'll talk in training, and this is too much wind the first, 5 times you fly the airplane. And after you've flown it 50 times, you could probably go to 22 knots. And that's just wind, not crosswinds. I want to be real clear about that. So that really matters too. Does this mean on your 5th flight you should be doing a 15 knot crosswind? So. We're, as Logan said, this is a special airplane that we get to fly here. We're going to be really, really safe. So the squadron SOP right now is 15 knots of wind. And if you have to start asking a lot of questions, the answer is probably you shouldn't go flying it. Obviously, left seat only for the PIC day VFR. No night flying. And we do not do touch and goes. We do not do stop and goes, although that's not written down. We full stop, taxi back. We'll talk about what just happened. We'll do it again. Yes, it's slow and laborious. Yes, it may be inefficient, but that's the way we're doing it. And because of the special nature of this airplane, it's not just some other airplane. Okay. Now we're going to talk about limitations for oil quantity. You may remember in the systems part, I talked about the oil quantity. And thanks to Duke for putting this material together. We did a bunch of research, and so this is what's done. So the dipstick, this is the dipstick out of that airplane. It's stamped, it says Imperial gallons on it. It's got little holes. A hole at full, a hole at 3 gallons, a hole at 2 gallons. There's little notches or little dents at some of the other markings. The tech order says the following. It says the capacity, you may remember this from system, 4 US gallons, and then it has, so that's 3.8 imperial gallon. Caution, at no time, any engine be run less than 2.5 US gallons. We're treating that as a limitation, 2.5 US gallons. But, oh, and the TCDS, by the way, also backs up the 4.25. But it does not have that limitation, but we're treating this as a limitation. But, so 2.5 US gallons, I just told you the thing is marked in imperial gallons. So we're gonna have to do some conversion. Okay? And one conversion we could use would be this, 4 1/4, and the engineers are gonna love this stuff. And the rest of you are really gonna look at me like I'm an engineer.
They're calculating wrong.
Thanks, dude.
So this is this is a possible conversion. That math is 0.894 imperial gallons to US gallons. So maybe that's right. But is that right? Just remember that 894. Let's go to Google first. Okay. Google says it's 833. Okay. So not 894. It says it's 833. Well, what, maybe some kind of World War II imperial gallon or something? What are we gonna do? So here's another hint from the. This is the flight chart that I mentioned before. In the tech order, it has 3.8 U.S. quarts per hour of oil consumption. 633 imperial pints. Okay, so oh my God, what are we gonna do about that? So, my head's hurting already. Google once again tells us that imperial gallon has 8 imperial pints, and I looked it up, and I wasn't sure. But a U.S. gallon is 4 U.S. quarts. So we got all the information we need to do a math problem here. So here we go. So 633 to 3.8. We're going to see if that works, and we're going to do the proper conversions to get this back to this imperial gallons per U.S. gallon. By doing that, Steph, you remember that from college? Boom, 833. All right, forget this 894. We saw before. 833 is the right number. That's what we're going to use for our conversion. And the bottom line of all of that, non-engineers, wake back up, pay attention, is that 2.5 U.S. gallons that we said we're going to follow is 2.1 imperial gallons. And that's our limitation. So on that dipstick, a little hole at 2, hole at 3 in the line. I'm going to go 2.1. Yep. Okay. Some additional information. Filling that thing up is a bad idea. Do not do it. If you fill that tank up, you're going to have this oil's going to come out all over the place. It's not a good idea. In general, target about 2.5 imperial gallons after flight. Like if you're servicing it, you know, but again, that 2 point in that range, 2.1 to 2.5 is legal. Now, if you were planning on a 5-hour flight and it was reading 2.1, yeah, probably time to take the time and get to 2.5 or 2.6 or 2.7 maybe. Yeah.
Question for the group, did we let it stick over there?
Yes. Well, yeah, because I did it.
Same.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was the very first thing I did when I was like, wait, I looked at it at the very top and said, wait, I am E, and I ran right over, grabbed the other one out, looked at it, said the same thing as well.
Yeah. And I noticed that, but I just never. I thought they're close. 833. All right, so the checklist is bad gallons. It doesn't actually have units, but it's U.S. gallons. So we'll make a pen and ink change. I meant to bring a sticker today, and I forgot. Just remember 2.1 on the dipstick, 2.5 target, 2.1 absolute minimum. All righty. Any questions on limitations? We're doing well. All right, let's get into normal procedures. We are not going to cover everything. We're going to just kind of cover the weird stuff. You're expected to, when you're getting your, coming up and get fammed in the airplane, then you get some cockpit time, look at the checklist, make sure you're comfortable with everything. The fuel tanks are way up there, so you're going to need a big ladder. We've got like a 6-foot ladder, and that's big enough for most people, but if you need a bigger one, make it happen. And be careful when you're getting up there. Hydraulic lock. So radial engine, we already talked about the oil kind of tends to drain down. There is the potential for the oil to gather in the lower cylinders. And if you tried to start it there, with the starter would start turning the engine, and the piston would go down and would go into oil, which is a incompressible fluid, and the piston rod, I believe, can actually bend. Those things are not really designed for that kind of resistance. They're designed to compress air and fire, not designed to go against incompressible. So we need to make sure there's no oil in those lower cylinders. So we do that by hand, but part of our pre-flight procedure, checking that the magnetos are off, so that the engine doesn't fire up on us. We're gonna take the prop around, and can we just add that to the training you do? Yeah, so we'll go through that too. It's a lot easier to show, but we're gonna make sure that we spin that thing about 7 to 9 blades, make sure that there's no oil in those lower cylinders, and then we know we're good to go. The next step of that is we don't turn the mags on right away when we're starting it. So we start it to go 6 blades, I think. I think that's what the checklist says. Then we turn the mags on. Again, it's a chance to discover a hydraulic lock in the engine, the lower cylinder prior to something. Mentioned, okay, so any questions on that? We'll talk more about that hands on. The oil quantity, I mentioned before, it's not accurate. Like right now, it's not accurate. Can't use it. So we have to fire up the engine, let it warm up. And here's what we do. The checklist takes care of it. You go through, you do all this stuff. And then this first flight of the day, operate engine 800 to 1,000 RPM, 3 minutes. And then do the after landing shutdown checklist and check oil. Okay? So checklist takes care of it. But just remember, you're gonna need to plan to do that. If you're giving rides, get that done before the rides come. So then you go to that after landing shutdown checklist. Same old, same old. One thing here is the throttle goes to 1,500. I don't think I had it on the slides, but I mentioned it. Max RPM before the engine oil is in the green is what? 1,000. So you can't do this until the engine's warmed up. So it, on a cold day, is going to be longer than 3 minutes. Wait until we could probably fix this checklist when I check in green too. Should remember before we do that step there to run it up. You'll notice that the prop goes after you let the engine warm up for a minute. That lower RPM, the prop goes to a full increase. That brings all of the oil out of the propeller into the engine. That's a very important step for checking the oil point. All right, and then you start, check your, shut down, check your oil level, service it as needed, get back in and start all over. Questions on this? It was a little confusing to me the first couple times. I just want to make sure you have it. Yes, sir.
Other comment along where you shift when you're moving, the controls for the prop were all pretty good about it. Nothing fast. Radial engines don't like fast. So it's really great to use that in air control. Walk it off, walk it in. The radial engines really like that. If you're pumping it back and forth, that's when things starts getting wrong.
That's a training emphasis area that hopefully I mentioned. Okie doke. Oh, there's the 1,000 RPM. Some other procedure stuff. We do lean the mixture, and there is a tendency for people to drag the brakes on their taxi signals thing. It gives you a feeling of control. It really does. But it's wearing the brakes unnecessarily. So you'll hear me when we start training, wanking at you, right? Yeah. Okay, the run up is conventional. Nothing really to talk about there. Takeoff, we set 1,500 in the brakes. It gives us wind over the rudder that's sufficient for directional control. It's a good standard procedure. This is all in a checklist, by the way. And before we take off, we're going to want to raise our tail, standard tail dragger stuff. And you can say, when do I raise my tail? I'm going to say, kind of doesn't matter. There's early tail raisers, guys that start pushing. Some airplanes, that's bad. It gets swirly. Some people are late tail raisers. Some people like to really take off with the tail low. This airplane is very insensitive to that tail raising techniques. You do what you want to do. I haven't really seen any issues. The airplane's not really light on its gear and squirrely if the tail's too low, and by the same token, it doesn't really hurt anything. I personally get it up relatively early because I like to see in front of me. The field of view is pretty bad when the tail's down. So I like to get that thing up and see the runway in front of me. So I get it up early-ish. I'm not going to get any over 20, 25 miles an hour.
It does big and speed faster than you do.
Okay. So you get tail up, then you rotate, you let it accelerate. There's a tendency to pull up and stay slow when you get to 87 knots. Don't be thinking it's high, big giant radio engine, warbird. I'm sorry, it's not a Corsair. So when you're happy, comfortable within a minute, set 2200 RPM, a little better. Rainier. And we'll go out and do some air work. Come back in and land. The landing patterns, I'm not going to brief this in detail here unless somebody wants it. I do this with everybody when we're flying, and we've all heard the spiel, so I don't feel like it's time well spent unless somebody really was here. This is new. I noticed, actually, I thought it was new, but I looked back at old versions of 60-2, and it's been in there. Requirement for it's optional accuracy landings. I contacted Urban and George Avett over Days Pay, and it's basically a dead stick landing, practicing dead stick landings. I've been doing it. I just never heard it called that. Go around is, as you remember from a previous slide, the go around is kind of threading the needle between settling back onto the runway and before flaps too early, and not climbing away if you leave the flaps down forever. Doesn't climb great with flaps down. We do not use the carb heat on landing. That's a SOP decision, and I believe it's the right answer. There's no systems reason to use it. The carburetor is pressurized carburetor. It is not susceptible to icing. Let me caveat this by saying if you're in icing conditions, yeah, you should be using carb heat already, but the standard carb heat off when you pull the power off that you do in your system 152 does not apply here. It's a different engine. And there's a downside is if you forget, the airplane's already kind of underpowered, and if you forget carb heat, we're going to be more underpowered. We leave the carb heat in on landings. The only time we ever use it is if we're in actual icing conditions. We do check it on the run on that run up, yes, sir. Yeah, but no. There is this note in the long glide before landing, the carburetor should be applied, but should be shut off. This may be your question, but it should be shut off immediately before the final approach. So that kind of backs up our procedure. And I guess if you did I don't think I've ever been above 3,000 feet. So I guess if you went somewhere at 10,000 feet and it was a moist day, this note might indicate to you that you want to make sure you didn't get any carb icing in that low power descent. But get it back in before me.
I can actually find this maybe from experience. So if you go up high, some myself and one around 3 fingers stay back, pull the power back, and they drop me down. No carb heat hold, no icing.
Okay.
So I mean, it's just like no pilot. If you're getting that rumble,
Yeah.
it's icing.
It was a pretty dry day that day.
But yeah, that's still.
Yeah.
Also, something we learned: the cabin air intakes can't turn off.
Yeah.
So
That was
when you're up at 7,000 feet, you can't turn off the cold air blowing.
it's
The pre-flight item when you take us.
even smaller. We have a great video of us blowing in these white clouds getting out of our mouths.
Okay, here's your emergency procedures. And you might want to remember this one right here. You might see that again. They're pretty standard. Make sure you're familiar with studded. We talked about this already. If you want the full flight profile, I got it. And we talked about it. Performance, it's not great, particularly the takeoff. We train to not rush the landing. Have we ever set an SOP for minimum flying? We talked about it, but I don't think we ever did.
Only for training. Only for 5,000 feet. Yeah, for training, never.
5,000 feet for training? Where's that written? In the PIM? The PIM. Pilot's information manual. Because there was the document that Ron was working on. It was like a training SOP where they put it, but it was never published to my knowledge.
Yes, that's the one. It still says draft on it. Right. Okay. They're officer.
Okay. Okay. Well, your training officer probably should do that too.
Actually, that's fine.
There was never one for naval operations. I know that we had that discussion, for example, with you and I took the Reliant into Evergreen.
Scared ourselves.
Yeah, it was like, we looked at this and we heard it was right. And that's 1,800 feet, so it's gonna be, what's the length of like the wall?
Yeah. So we're good out here, which is typically where we train. Gadget. I don't think we have a set number. Just be, particularly when you're new to the airplane, be super conservative.
And they use where you listen all that.
There's a stall speed chart. If you're interested. Let's see. Types for oil are on the checklist. We have, Logan's gonna talk about oil, filling up the jugs. Tire pressure is on the checklist, 25 PSI. Make sure if you do have any questions, utilize your maintenance experts. Give us really know the airplane. So that's it for systems training. And any questions?
One, if you put 2 of these awesome bottles inside of there, you'll be good to go for your flight, and then obviously you'll check after that. Now, we're gonna have these on our shelf, which we'll have set up. We kind of had to take over all the things up. We'll have a shelf for these. For some reason, these are empty. Do not throw them away, by the way. This is our oil barrel. This is our fancy oil pump that is not pneumatic, nor will it shoot oil everywhere. It's really, really simple. Now you have the can under it to catch. You can set this in there however you want. You can use a funnel.
So,
Still want to burp.
I spent the 3 years in Lockheed.
Just go. Once you get it going, it kind of just starts flowing in there. If you go too fast, you're going to shoot it everywhere. You see, it just doesn't require a lot. It'll actually fill this up fairly quickly.
And how do you stop it?
How do you stop it from going with this?
Yeah. How do I stop it?
Yep. I used to go about 5. This is my old one from Normandy. So, but the thing is, it'll still kind of go a little bit. That's what this fancy coffee can is. If we fill up the coffee can, we just pour it.
Where are the funnels located?
I gotta find it because someone moved them. So, anyways, that's how you fill this up. Nice and slow. It'll fall in there. Again, when you're done, it'll mostly stop. It'll still trickle a little bit. It may take a couple more. But so that make sure that this cap on the end, you don't lose this on the barrel. We keep it 1 screw in. This right here. Exactly, and you go 1 turn in. That keeps FOD from falling inside or other debris. It allows it to vent. If you block, ooh, thank you, Bullworth. That works perfect. You can move the coffee can out of the way or whatnot, do it. But
You have to take that out when you're pumping or not?
no, you just leave it right there.
And
Yep.
we can leave the pump in.
Yes, the pump's in there. When at any point we'll monitor, maintenance will monitor this. But if for some reason you're not getting oil when you're pumping it through, this is set right now about this far off the bottom. That's again so we don't suck up stuff off the bottom. As we get to it, we'll be able to lower it deeper through. But let us know if you're having any problems. We'll check up on it. But this right here, this thing, as long as you keep moving your arms, this thing will pump forever. So that's where we're getting our oil. That's where we have it here. If you're out on the road, always ask for the oil we're using, which is 25W60. However, despite urban myth, if you do have to get Aeroshell 120 to get us through or whatnot, it's not going to blow the engine up. It's not going to cause the seals to die. Rail engines, Tulsa will tell you the exact same thing. So either are okay, but verify, trust and verify. This is 25W60. A common other oil is 20W50. That's what this takes. Big difference. So verify, verify, verify. If you get oil from somewhere, verify it says 2560. Also, if you're getting oil from any other facility, if we're on the road, please make sure that the containers you are getting are sealed when you get them, unless they are from a marked barrel that is not rusted or gross. That's because often other people will reuse their containers. There's no way for us to verify what's inside that. So to protect our asset, well, headquarters asset, our baby, and our wallets, obviously sealed bottles or barrels, and if they're going to pump out, ask to see the barrel. If it's rusted or gross or it's all nasty or whatnot, try to think of another option. One thing I'll throw in real quick too, we didn't have it in training, there's kind of a maintenance thing with pilots though, is whenever we're going to anywhere off site. Now this will be our first year where we're going to be going over the mountains. When you land and you taxi, I want you guys to be looking around for a hangar that can hold a wing, I always say wingspan of 42 feet, just in case. So in our big girls, my job as the engineer is actually to do that, but with our pilots, just make sure whenever we're landing anywhere, be looking around for a hangar or FBO or someone that we can establish in case we have a mechanical or weather moves in or something and we need to leave our aircraft there. Do that. So establish that. So,
Gonna go pretty fast. Yeah, you know all about this. Okay, so flight release, flight following. What is our process? And the answer is we really don't have anything written down. So this is what we're doing at the present time. Seems to be working. There's nothing official yet, but we're gonna get there. So we are sending an email to the pilots. Most of the pilots are also on staff, but like Mark, if you start flying the airplane, you're not on staff. So you'll send an email to the staff. So particularly, I think the big hitters, CO, OPSO, maybe maintenance. I don't really need to be on there. Safety O, I don't know. Treasurer needs to know with your basic plan. Hey, I'm going flying today, 2 hours, whatever. It's not super tight, but just let them know you're planning on going. We don't have a schedule, to sign out so other people can check. So the idea is to let anybody else that might be interested in flying the airplane know that you're going. Afterwards, follow up with a quick report on how'd you do? Were there any issues with the airplane? How did everything go? And that is Woody particularly asked for that because that's his tip off to go in and look at Rally Point and see about charging, making sure that you get charged for the hours. I'm skipping all the Rally Point stuff today. You'll get it on individual training. I think everybody that's flying the airplane knows how to do it. Just in the comments section, just basically say who's getting charged for the flight and at what rate. We're doing full rate for, if you're just flying, we're doing the reduced rate if you happen to be authorized to take it to an air show or something. Maintenance flights are free.
Question about that.
Yeah.
Because I think I've already burned through my block.
Yes. So,
So, are we being proactive and like going to the website, like to send Woody money, or do we wait for him to email us and say, hey, here's my fee?
they'll say you wait. I'd say wait.
Okay.
I asked Woody last night, I called him and I said, in the comments, do you want us to keep track of our prepayment? Like our burn down of the prepayment. He said no. He doesn't want to make that a specific process. I'm planning on doing it mostly for myself. just to keep track. I've paid for 5 hours, haven't used any, you know, if I go flying hours.
That's why.
In the comments of Rally Point. I think it's a smart idea, but he said he didn't need it. So I guess that'd be a technique recommended. No problem.
But the other thing is, we're trying to have multiple levels of redundancy, because there's a lot of bird, like with Arizona, when the maintenance officer died, a bunch of stuff got messed up because he was the sole contact,
Yeah.
the sole person. So in this case, putting it in Rally Point where you're working it down, keeping a thing. I know some people aren't proactive, and the moment they fly, they instantly send go to the link, they send Woody the money, and they send them an email saying, I just paid for such and such hours. Because if not, he may get a little bit behind on bookkeeping, or he could die, or something could happen.
So that's a different answer than I gave you. I wait for his, I think he does I don't know how he does it, but.
If you'd like to be proactive, I would like that.
Okay.
All right. Not required.
Okay, this is, I think, appropriate to talk about. So getting qualified, the first thing you have to be authorized to enter the training portal. I'm the training officer. Duke's the ops officer. You got to work with him to get the transition letter. That's the thing that authorizes you to receive training. Okay. So now do all of that stuff. That's one line on this slide, and it's like a lot of work, and it's a pain in the ass. And go ahead.
Do they expire?
Duke, you had a transition letter. Does his transition letter expire?
I think the answer is yes, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. So that's action on you. Send him an email.
I never saw him, sorry.
You never saw it. Okay. Well, actions for you is to send him an email and say, can I train? You know, do I have a current transition letter? It was, you know, it's been a couple of years, and then Duke will find it. Is that fair, Duke?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I mean, yeah. Okay, to enter training, you have to have 10 hours of tail wheel time in the last 12 months and 10 landings.
Do the first initial.
So you got those things done, then we start training. Okay, we've done ground school today, we'll do flight training. Just work with me to schedule it. Yes, I'm busy, but I've got time. You know, we'll figure it out. But you got to contact me. No saying, oh, this guy's hard to get a hold of when you never tried. So
That's to start when you get $70.
that's just a scheduled training. It may be the final check flight, or it may be FAM 1. Just contact me to go flying.
If you're training and you don't have 10 hours, 10 landings in the last 12 months, you can't continue until you get those.
Yeah, that's a coming in the front door thing. You're not gonna get that with me in the airplane.
What, by the way, I know it's a goofy question. What do you need a log? I mean, I haven't dig up my logbooks. I haven't had a logbook, used a logbook in a while. You want them to dig one up and have somebody, like I'm not current on my tail wheel. So I'll go, the guy next to me has got a
Yeah, so you'll say, hey,
champ,
Bob,
and we'll go fly. But do you want it in a logbook?
I don't need the logbook, but I need at least an email where you say, hey, on the February 2nd, I flew 2 hours on
Gotcha.
and landings. So I need hours and landings. I need some objective evidence that you did that.
Now the other thing though is that if an incident does happen, headquarters can ask for verification.
Oh,
Right. So if they ask me,
Make sure
I'm
no
gonna say,
pencil with it.
I haven't thrown my logbooks away. They're somewhere. I can dig it out.
so they're gonna ask me, and I'll say, I got this email from the guy. I trusted the guy. And if they say, Bob, you shouldn't have trusted him, I'll say, well, I fucked up.
In the 10,
And I'm not gonna make you show me your logbook. Right? I'm not gonna do that.
10 hours, 10 landings, last 12 months. That's even for people continuing
Sure.
flying as well too. So
Yeah, if you have, well, okay. You're saying that's not just to start training,
that's
but
not
like,
start. That's continue.
like Woody. Well, he's a bad example because he's got it. But somebody that stopped training, started training but then stopped, that starts all over.
Well, that's for every pilot. We have to have 10 hours, 10 landings the last 12 months.
So you do.
Yeah.
In the tail. Yep.
Yeah, and tell them you can't just
That was the enter training.
that's to enter because that's making you in compliance with it. So you have to try.
And And it's a continuing requirement. I did not know that.
Yes.
Do you not know that?
And I
I am
have,
gonna go read that, because I
can verify it, 'cause we asked,
yeah, okay, I will verify that.
yeah, because what it is you can't have people who haven't flown their time in the year, just jump into a CAF aircraft and start flying it.
Yeah.
You can, as long as they go with somebody else who is.
Yeah, but you get one, you understand.
I get what you're saying, there is a currency requirement, but I didn't know it's 10 hours, 10 minutes.
Yeah, I didn't either. I'll verify that. 'Cause I thought it was different. Okay, and,
But if you go with somebody else who is current, you're not counting anything towards this.
Well, you're training, so you have to.
well, if you're flying with, what's it good? If you're flying with Logan, because he's not a CFI, I don't even think you can walk that time.
No.
Well,
But
right,
even
to
if
break
you-
it down too, I'm a CFI, but I'm not a CAF instructor.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't count either.
But you still can't, even though you're,
Per CAF, right?
Well,
Even
they're
if
talking
you're
CAF rates, but because I already have like their little endorsement, you're talking out in the world, I can't.
oh, out in the world you can, but CAF's requirements for the aircraft's that. So even if you were to, because you're training, you're still operating their, at their requirement to operate their aircraft.
Let's, rather than do a bunch of what ifs, I think it's gonna depend on who's the one pilot is and who the other pilot is, what the answer is gonna be. And so, let's just work that in. As I talked about, you're gonna fly right seat first if you're, getting, okay. So existing pilots, it's your job to track the timing of, so you guys are all due, other than Grant, are due for a 602 check sometime. It's your job to track the timing of it, I believe. I don't think the OPSO's bugging people. I'm not bugging people saying, hey, a month from now, your medical's running out, your 602's running. That's your job, okay? Get with me in advance or get with the check pilot. And right now it's just me, but we're gonna get Duke qualified and eventually Grant will get qualified, I believe. So we'll be flush. We got the ground school, that's easy. On the 602 check for existing pilots, so that's most of the guys here in the room. I'm assuming that you know what you're doing. I'm gonna give you a list of maneuvers to do. You're gonna come brief the flight, conduct the flight, we'll debrief it, and we're done. I'll throw in a couple of emergencies, yes, but don't expect this to be, it's not a training flight, it's a check flight. So that's the approach that I take. Okay. I would like to, I think I'm gonna skip this because I think I talked enough. I'm gonna skip all this stuff. This is the maneuver that I do, you guys have all seen. I'll go through it fast. So basically we're doing there's a partial panel requirement on the 602 check. We're a VFR airplane, so if we end up in the clouds, you screwed up. All right? And it's a major deal in aviation. You know, this kills a lot of people. So how did you do that? Well, this is one of the training courses says these are the things that you did. You applied poor judgment. You know, you didn't check the weather right. You were overconfident. There was some pressure. You made a poor decision. Night mountains can certainly fly around here. We're not supposed to be flying the airplane at night. We may fly in the mountains. So you may have expectations success, expectation of success, expectation of violence. So the best plan is to not by doing all of this stuff right. But if you do it, you end up in the goo. What should we do? What's the right answer? And fly the airplane
Or 180 to be here.
Okay. So I've been saying 180. I did some more reading in preparation to give this class, and that's not always the right answer because you might have mount but so the right answer is to fly the airplane out of the goo. And that might, in some cases, mean going straight ahead. It's going to depend. What I do is the classic 180 degree approach. So that's what we're gonna practice in training. Just realize it's situationally dependent on what you read. So you're gonna refer just to your flight instruments. You've got this gyro horizon. You're gonna start your turn, and then oh shit, it's gonna fail. And then what you're gonna do, you're going to use the turn needle. Don't use too much of that terminal, just do one needle thing. If you start using a bunch more, you really lose track of how much bank angle you have, and you can set yourself up. So, and then how long do you do it? Well, if you got a heading indicator, you can watch the wet compass. That might help you if you knew what it was originally. There's also the DG, it's really shitty on us there, right? It processes badly. It's usually locked because we don't have a checklist step to check it, right? It's just not, it doesn't work well enough to be usable. So the wet compass is probably your best plan. Or what else could you do? Clock. Exactly. Good news. But you can just watch the clock. The standard rate turn is 108 degrees. It's 2 minutes. But that'll take a long, it'll feel like a long time. Okay, now we did that, but you screwed it up. You come out, you eventually come out of the clouds, but you're coming out down, or you went out on top of the clouds that way. So that's what the usual attitude training is about. And there's lots of information about this too. There's many ways to skin the cat. There's classes in it. I just got done with a 3-day course in it. There's all kinds of stuff here, guys, and I'm not going to try to repeat that. But here's one way to think of UPRT, which is an acronym for upset and recovery. But it's also an acronym for what to do in an unusual attitude situation. The U is to unload. And I kind of chafed against this. Unload for sure is good if your nose high or if you're about to stall. But I said unload when your nose down, and the answer that I said was yes. I think this comes from the airline industry because it increases your roll rate. You unload, you can roll faster.
They're tweaking that now, by the way.
Okay, so I'm just telling you what the course, the most recent training I had, and then he discussed it, and I was like, I did it. And 747.
You gotta worry about the roll rate on that.
Really? So I'd say do something with pitch, you know, like if I'm up here, I'm gonna roll off, right? Take my lift factor. But anyway, that's gonna depend on your background and your comfort with stuff like that. So there's something you gotta do with pitch. And then you wanna worry about power. If your nose up, you're gonna want some. If your nose down and airspeed decreasing, you're gonna want to take some off. You're gonna wanna roll to get to the roll to the nearest horizon, and then you're gonna want to transition back to normal flight. So, you know, if you're down like this, you know, you can roll and pull gently back to the horizon. Power is required. If you're up here, you're going to do something with roll, or maybe you can push and unload if you like going negative, get it back to the horizon. So, but we're gonna practice. There's that lift, you know, making the lift vector work for you thing. We're gonna practice the nose high and the nose low on the jump. So I just wanted to explain that here before we start doing checks. And people are, what are we doing? It's kind of the academic background. Questions? All right. Thank you for your kind attention. The Duke man is up next.
Yeah, I get to help you out, for everybody that's left, relearn how to spell, PRM. It is obligatory, comes with another acronym, so SRM, ORM, and we're gonna tack on an ERP at the end. That's our emergency recovery plan. I am cognizant of your time, it's very valuable. We promised to get you out of here about, so I think I can do it. I'll just keep things moving along and and here are the definitions of all those acronyms. Started out decades ago as cockpit resource management, but it's since morphed into crew resource management. And it's since been adopted by other industries as well as aviation. It's been used by a lot of folks for trying to maximize their sea work while minimizing emergencies and problems. SRM then it migrated to a single pilot crew. Not just airline flight deck crews, but people flying around by themselves. They need to realize that sure enough, you aren't alone. You got the other helpers and people you can rely on and a crew concept. Along with CRM then comes the letters ORM. If you're doing good professional aviation, the operational risk assessment should be done, and it should have some kind of management or matrix that goes along with it. That way, we're going to save a little time at the end for a drill. Bob's going to help me out, and then we're going to put a couple of folks on notice here who have to play a drill. Here's what that is, the drill patients here that might help us out with the ERP employment. Also, we're going to update our ERP for the earlier and make sure we're okay. Bob and I did that for showtime this morning, but I need to confirm that. Here are my resources that I use. There's some references. The 60-2 sure is where this resides. It is a requirement, like Bob said, it's an annual thing. And it is in chapter 2, along with the thing that Bob covered. We're covering right now. You got to have a full 6 hours, it says, of CRM. So didn't know it at the time, but everything since Logan started talking, is CRM. Didn't finish up right on time with 6 hours. And we're going to give ourselves credit for it.
See, even though for once my gabbing actually.
And all of the,
No, I'm only going to be up here for an hour.
the training plans that we do and everything, all of that is CRM focused. Visually, trying to get credit.
And it requires the form 602 also, sort of. 2 years ago, when I tried to fill it out with CAF Rainier, it slapped me in the face and told me, hey, we wouldn't accept it. There's a spot on the 602 form for CRM, and you should fill it in with today's date. But I'm asking you, please don't get me in trouble with Bill Urban. I am not your instructor today, even though I'm up there talking. Your instructor today for CRM is Bob Stoney.
I'll get drunk.
He's supervising me right now, making sure I don't say anything untoward or inaccurate. So I'm an instructor in training, but I get to be the CRM training. And then when you fill out your 602 form, use today's date and Bob's information, which he didn't give you yet today, but he'll give you, or just call him up or have him send you an email with his CAF number, CFI, going to today's date and location. In the remarks section of the rally point, that's where I put it, and that'll make it go green. They trust you. But then you got to get it into the 602 now as well. If you're in the middle of a checkout, apparently that 602 form is only used for the 602 check price. Because everything else on it is red. You have to fill it in or the send button to work and get stuff through. Yeah, sure.
You guys don't even have,
You get the
vibration.
So for ground school, I go in there and do it.
Are you going to do it for everybody?
Yeah. I don't remember there being a rally point item for CRM.
There is. In fact, you're red up above in the general requirements list for CRM.
If I
I'm
could
pretty
change
sure
that,
that's
I
for
would.
CRM. Yeah, and then you hit the view. They'll let the individual pilots select it. I did that for Captain Mac, but I couldn't explain why.
But Stoney's intention is to go in there and check out.
Yes, he's providing that service for you. I wouldn't do that. In fact, if I was you, I'd insist on going in myself, making sure that someone does it.
All right. Check, maybe.
Yeah, all right. Good stuff. That's my lead into what we don't want to do. What do we want to do? Well, here's what I selected for this year's annual training. Leveraged off of Bob and Captain Act before that for 2023 and 2024, and then also our CAF Reg 60-2 paragraph A, table G. The information that we have to obviously take care of there, and then what I picked was something out of the AOPA Air Safety Institute. There was an article back in 2019, and being a CFI, there's a lot of good stuff in there. If you're a CFI, you may want to reference some of their materials for teaching and learning. It came in handy, so that's what I'm going to focus on today. In that article, there's references 4 and 5 One, and since I'm former Navy and have instruction, so I could tell the author of this article was a former Navy guy. And then also he references the advisory circular 120-51, which is the guiding principles for FAA and the program for CRN. So that's what you're going to get today in the next 35 minutes. Okay, here is the right stuff, and what we're trying to promote then is the skill set that he talks about, which is also in that OPNAV instruction, which is the top level setting of the program for CRM in the Navy. It's very similar to the Air Force, which goes to CONNAV Air Back, which then goes to NAVAIR Syscon, and then they come up with a program. In this program, they come up with 7 skill sets that I'm going to talk through, and then I'm going to count on you to stay awake because I may be asking questions. So I'm having an Aristotelian type of a program here where you got to answer some questions and make sure you're listening. But you've all seen these before. We're refreshing. We're not teaching here. We're just refreshing some of these things that you didn't know I was going to go that fast, did you?
That's a great program.
That you've seen before. Okay. Faster and funnier, Tom. Okay. Mission analysis. So it divides it up into 3 sections. So that's the pre-flight planning, and then the en route evaluation, and then actually taking the time to do the post-flight assessment. Situation awareness. He spends a lot of time on this and says, yeah, and I agree with him. In the Navy, that's what they always said: maintain your situation awareness. It's kind of like the innate comfort level. If you're comfortable as you walk out the door after the pre-flight, you're off to a good start. If you feel that comfort level starting to decrease, you know your situational awareness is decreasing and you need to regain it. Communication and teamwork. Communication in order to assess or promote the teamwork. If you do have a multi-person flight deck, or you have a crew working with you, or you're just flying with another pilot, in order to have that good teamwork, you got to have the communication. Adaptability, flexibility. You got to stay flexible, and that's what allows you to recover from bad situations that weren't expected. And then the decision making, which is a big part of it too. You gotta be able to come up with solutions to problems, and then you gotta have the courage and conviction and make a decision and stick with it. But that flexibility and building up a game plan, you still got to see that flexibility. That decision making may in fact be a solution to a problem, but you may want to call some audibles and have those dangling in the back of your brain cells and have those ready to go if things don't progress or work out the first time around. And then the assertiveness, it's a psychological thing that helps you accomplish the decision making. And then the leadership, I'll talk about here in a moment. As soon as I find my notes. He spends a little bit of time on that, but not quite enough. So I went to the advisory circular and also to the NAVAIR Syscon instruction. They talk about leadership then as establishing a vision and trying to get the coordination while your team members going like Persian cats going in the same direction. It's leadership anywhere else, just like it is in an aircraft. But it's important to understand there's a difference. They use 2 different kind of labels or categories of leadership. One referred to as the designated or by authority, like our CEO is a designated authority. But then there's another one that's distinct, one called functional. And I'll share that in the Navy fighter community, you got 2 people. They got you got the skipper in one aircraft, he's the lead, and you got the junior guy in the wing, and he's covering 6 while you're prosecuting a bad guy. Well, who's in charge? Who's the lead? Well, it's the skipper, right? Because he's the designated guy, the senior guy, and that's appropriate. He has the most experience. But if he loses sight in an incident, that wingman, even though he's an ensign or a JG, has to take over and lead the fight and become the guy that's prosecuting the fight or the attack against the enemy. Where the lead guy, the designated skipper, then becomes a supporting crew and takes on that role. Well, the same thing is true. What we don't want to have happen in the cockpit, some junior guy who can see the problem that's developing, not say anything. That's one of the classic things that's in some of the videos that everybody probably heard before. Regarding CRM is having people in two sides, not assertive, not stepping up to a leadership role and saying, hey, Captain, like you saw in the example in the video, the launch stuff. He's determined and he's got his nose fixed on one solution. It's not being flexible, and the younger person in the crew is seeing this is going nowhere fast, and that's going to get us all killed, and not stepping up to say something. So we don't want to have that happen. Oh, yes, there's what, some 2 years, 3 years ago.
Yeah, they got four whole wall by points, right? But the Oriental culture, they were all referring to.
That's what I remember hearing in the debrief. I didn't read the whole thing in the safety report, but yeah, that was the bigger thing with that, but cultural issue. It's like what?
Yeah, they wouldn't.
It's more of a crew environmental that we can have in here. We teach us to draft this using talking to and it could be, structure, it could be the container aircraft here, but let's be in the corner of people who are not, I was to start as slow as possible to try to build friendship between another person here. So you start really well with state and I'm concerned about how we're doing maintenance on their and trying to get your thoughts out of it. In the work meeting situation, if we don't feel like we're heard, then we'll be bringing to the next level. I'm uncomfortable with this situation. I think we should do stuff different and see it down and then get your point across at that. And you can say, this is not stable, we're stopping, we're all sitting down. People don't get it. They try to teach us to be what people level, so
Excellent.
You said cuts?
cuss. No, and I'm not comfortable. It's you're not comfortable,
Concerned.
uncomfortable, not safe.
Not safe. Tons.
Cuss.
See you at,
See you on.
These are the level of priority.
Yeah.
And, it's like your voice too, with your frequency, your voice goes up higher and higher.
When they get to the point where they get to the
Yeah.
that's what the S is.
That's what you call it, go around.
That's the second half and
I like that.
But I think you can apply that here too, because we're definitely in an environment for what the people want you know it's a single time.
Okay, you guys are terrific. I haven't had to listen to comments. I already got them, so that's good thing. And you mentioned the concern that what they taught us in the Navy is, or in the DCMA conflict is raise your hand and say, I have a concern. And if that's all you can get in word and edgewise. Then the obligation is the lead pilot, the guy in control, has got to get back to that person who has the concern, even though he's busy doing something else. And that drives him. Something else that I need to mention too is from the Navier Syscon instruction. Since I retired, they came up with, in addition to the CRM, they have a new thing called TEM. And Bob, I don't know if you remember that since you've been there at Navier Syscon, but that stands for threat error management, where the two terms then threat error are two bad things that you need to manage, and then that can lead to what they call undesired aircraft state of some kind, hydraulics, or attitude, or fuel system that you're trying to manage. So they tack that on, they come up with a neat model, and they put that alongside the CRM triangle, and of course, one upside down triangle where everything's green and hunky dory at the top. But as things start to degrade, you got to start kicking in this TEM model, and that's what they've had since 2016. All with the intent to build the team competency and address the challenges of something that doesn't go right. Okay, along with that then is the aerodynamical decision making. On that previous list was the decision making itself. There's that phrase or acronym ADM. And you can see that this is the typical flow of events here, where you're assessing something that's going on, or throughout your flight, you're assessing everything, the comfort factors way up there, but then things start to degrade. And you guys start stacking up on you, and you're assessing, and things are starting to go down. So you're starting to retrieve information then, devise a plan to get that comfort level back up again, along with some possible obstacles, and then you execute that plan that you devise. The cost in between here and here, here and here, here and here is let's not be doing audibles on the fly. They got to be pre-planned audibles. For example, the typical situation that people brief is say you're going off into the runway here and you start to lose power, and you're losing altitude. You can't hold your altitude. Start executing the checklist, which is on our test today. You find a good place to land. You're all set up. You're in a perfect position to field anything that you're going to walk away from. You know you're going to be okay. But wait a minute. All of a sudden, power comes back, and it comes back up. It's responsive. But you're right in the middle of that controlled approach. You're all set to go. You know you're going to walk away from it. Put the power back on. You say, hey, I can make it back to an on-field landing now. Back to runway 16 or 11 here at Arlington. And all of a sudden, as you're playing up, it quits good. The partial power went up and all. Now you can't that Arlington over to the northwest. That's not good. So if we didn't have it planned, let's refrain from doing audibles on the fly. Once you get the plan and engaged, then continue the reassessing. You're back to the sound. Back and forth. All while aviating, navigating, communicating, required. CRM then requires that development of what they call synergy. And that's blending everything together. You got to be professional. You got to be coordinated. Kind of curb the attitudes. Know the people on your flight deck. Some people, have the class A-type personality. You got to spoke them once in a while, but and listen to them. But remember, if you're in charge, you got to make deploy all team members that are all possible, and try and get the information from as many sources as possible. I had a good experience coming back from Port Townsend there with Woody, and sure enough, it was sun in the back. That was when we had the bad radio. It was intermittent. Throughout the entire event there at Port Townsend, we came back here to Arlington, and there's traffic all over the place. I'm making my calls, but I don't know whether I'm getting out at all. I made the calls, and I'm looking all over the place. I got my little laptop iPad, but I don't have any way of. I didn't have the ESB in at the time, so I'm eyeballs out looking. Simon was nice enough to make the calls for me. He was following me over. I didn't even know his position. I knew he was in the vicinity, but he was nice enough to keep an eye on me and made some calls, and it was inconsequential. But fortunately, visually, I picked up all the traffic that was here. And sigh of relief and paperwork all this day. But I got back to participation and on somebody that I didn't even expect, and thanks to the assignment I went wrong. In the training for this, it's got to be recurrent. It's gotta, like we're doing right now. It's got to be annual. Initial training certainly, but the blended training then with the crew as much as possible, and then it's got to be refreshed. I'll give you an example. The last job I had as a test pilot did with the Triton and the Global Hawk programs, in a flight test situation. That aircraft was flown by 4 different pilots, 2 different control stations, 2 different rooms, and sometimes on 2 different sides of the plant. In a test situation, also, there's a control room. You could have up to 50 people in there. And then one guy in charge, or quarterback, or test director, the job which I used to do, He's got all this information. He has displays in front of him, but he doesn't have all the detailed displays that the engineers are watching. And you get some mousy little gal that's just 2 years out of college who's running, say, the hydraulics and keeping an eye on that, or the environmental control system. And she doesn't want her to say anything because she's too shy and big. Or she's just, quite often, well, it's just the opposite. You got somebody that won't shut up in their concept, and the test director is going to talk to the pilot who's on the other side of the planet. You can't get a word in edgewise, so it runs again. Different ends of the pendulum. You got to have some way to manage that. Well, what we would do is just come up on the ICF like strategy and say, hydraulics, I have a concern, and then shut up. There's a lot of talking going on, and then the test director goes, okay, go ahead, hydraulics. Okay, yeah, you're going to lose it in about 5 more minutes. We got nothing. We're leaking. The pressure's going down. So okay, it's time for descent. Start heading down. Whatever the plan they come up with, but it's got to be a coordinated, blended training. That's what we're trying to achieve here, and the true with the even small group. Okay, obstacles. Okay, we talked about the wrong stuff in those videos. But here's some more for you. In addition to what we had in the video, you got management or external influences, or an old crusty captain that is set in his ways and he's not listening to anybody. You could have all of this stuff too. Paralysis of analysis. We quite often had that in the test community, where we have too much information coming our way. And how do you the environmental control system alone on the Global Hawk, we had a very dedicated engineer who put all kinds of sensors in the thing. And we had so much information, which we needed at the time for the first flight, but it was retained throughout the entire program. They finally had to delete some of these things because they had yellow lights going off all the time. We had so much information coming in. You can have a sensory overload, what we call a helmet fire, where you got so much information, you don't know even how to begin to sort it all out. You get to the point sometimes where, hey, you're just fed up. You got resignation going on in your brain cells, and you're just ready to give up. And the answer to that is you just can never, ever, ever give up. If you can walk away from the accident, you did a good job. Give the airplane back to the taxpayer if you have to judge. You could have a situation where you get poor risk assessment or no risk assessment at all. In other words, no ORM checklist, which we're about to talk about next. Deviation from the plan or your audible that you briefed, and like I said, have a controlled power off approach to an off airfield landing, and you're all set to go, and then all of a sudden you deviate from it because you got suckered into it by your engine. Okay, loss of situation then gradually or sometimes quickly due to any of these reasons: fatigue, complacency, unfamiliar aircraft or aircraft systems. Can make that comfort level go from high to low real quick. You know, like I said, management, external interference, distractions. We had a management that was not very supportive, both within the Navy, the Air Force, and Northrop Grumman, that just thought they knew everything. And there were times when I just had to tell them. I said, "Yeah, you can keep the mission on the schedule, but I'm not going to push the takeoff button. None of my pilots are going to take off either. This isn't going to happen." Well, the reply back was, "We got millions of dollars riding on this one event. You got to get airborne. We need to get this data." No, you don't, because you're going to end up with killing somebody and crashing an airplane. Well, how do you get over this? Well, you have a thing called an ORM matrix. That kind of gets the pilot off the hook, and it gets you off the hook too, even if you're just going out to fly your own aircraft for fun, or you got a mission that you got to go on. And this is impossible to read, and I expected that. So what I did was come up with some copies. If you could start passing those.
How many people have used an actual ORM checklist? And you don't use it in United. I've always been interested that the airlines don't do it. I think it's probably baked in. But.
Yeah.
So the piece of paper is almost as difficult to read, but what I want you to do is focus on the far left-hand column. There's all the things, criteria here, the shaded blocks or the categories with the subcategories each one, and then from right to left, green, yellow, red. Oh, from really comfortable green all the way to really nasty red. And notice the date in the upper right-hand corner. This is about 10 years ago, and the name in the lower left-hand corner. This is one of the ones I found in a brown cardboard box in the garage. And it's from an old Triton, that's the Navy's flavor of the Global Hawk unmanned air vehicle checklist. And who has to sign off on it? The pilot, which is me, and the flight test manager. And then also, what's missing? Lower right-hand corner. This is before it got signed off by the GFR. In fact, I'm walking down I made a copy of this before I walked down to get the GFR, the government flight representative, who is supposedly the honest broker, independent agent on campus that's supposed to approve this. If you got 2 or more reds, you have to get the GFR to sign this before he'll let you take off. That gets the pilot off the hook. All I have to do is hold that in front of my manager's face and say, "Hey, we're not going flying today." You do the canceling with the boss, but we were told over and over again, the pilots do not cancel a flight. That's a management thing. Well, this is my get out of jail free card. And being in a flight test community, look at that first criteria. We're almost always red because the time between the flights and the criteria for currency, almost always are in the red. So I always expected that I have to get a GFR to sign this on the lower right-hand corner. But what I'd like you to do then is, as you're looking at that,
So is this car?
yeah, that's the actual grade. That's the actual grade that I filled out as the pilot or the lead guy assessing. And then there's weather, there's the aircraft itself, there's the mission. Operational risk management then for human factors, the mission, weather conditions, diverts in airspace and the aircraft. And if I recall, this was off the coast of Virginia in the vacates airspace in the restricted area out of Pax River. And we actually had the acronym I am safe on there as well, that's used by the pilots themselves. But then you got to reconcile it down at the bottom. If you can squint your eyes in the lower and the bottom, you have the pilot's then obligated to type it in there. He's got to consolidate all the bad things that can happen that he contends is not going to work well today. And then below in the box below that, you got to make the honest effort to say, hey, I'm gonna reconcile those bad things with the following get well cards and see if it'll sell. And sometimes it doesn't. You take it to the GFR and he says, hey, I'm sorry, you guys haven't been flying a while. You need some more sim time. Or sometimes I'll use it. I'll say, hey, I'm up to speed, but the other 3 guys haven't been seeing the sim in 3 months. I don't have a crew here that's current, and I need to work with them for a while. And I'll say, okay, let's put them on the schedule for some currency training, and then we'll delay it. But you got to be an honest broker to yourself too. And I realize a lot of people don't use the ORM checklist here or a matrix like this. So what do you use? Well, as a CFI, when I'm doing biennial flight reviews, what I'll use is, you can take the ORM checklist and just throw them away, or you can save them. But here's what I use, and it's from the Aviation Safety Institute, AOPA. And it looks like this. For us, we could just use the VFR pilot person minimums contract. But the IFR version as well, which is a little bit more detailed and make sure you've been keeping up with your instrument proficiency. But it looks like this. The instructions are on this side, and then on the back side, you just fill it out similar to the ORM checklist, and it's a personal contract between you and yourself, and maybe your CFI in the lower right-hand corner if you want to have him involved in it. And you both sign it down at the bottom and put the last date on it, and you kind of refresh yourself, keep it in your flight bag, and if you say, hey, it's been about 3 years since I filled one of these out, you may want to fill out a new one, and be honest with yourself, be an honest broker for yourself, and fill out some of these items for weather, airport, aircraft. I will list on the far right-hand corner or right-hand side And it keeps you honest and avoids a situation where you're trying to convince yourself you might be safe when you're otherwise not.
This just is just data though. It doesn't. Personal minimums contract.
It's a contract with yourself to.
So let's say I'll partially do it. I got 0 hours in 90 days. I'm feeling adequate. It's 30 knots of wind. It's a 2,000-foot runway. What's the?
Yeah, the grading isn't there, is it?
There's no. Just data.
It is, and it's not like the ORM checklist where you gotta reconcile it.
Well, wait, this is supposed to be your personal minimum.
That's what we.
You
Okay,
do have
so-
personal minimums
Yeah,
on there.
you break down to what your personal minimum is, where you're at.
You rate one with the other, but
Okay, so
It's still
it's
up to you when
It's
you
not
go.
my current hours in 30 days. It's what if I don't have that wind, I don't go.
If you're a sober 0G, you fill that out, and then you don't do it the morning where it's bad weather. You go, I think I can make it today. You're supposed to. I think the idea of this form is then to go back and say, no, I told myself I would never fly when it went.
So is everything a go no go though? There's like if I'm not well that day, but there's no wind and I'm on board.
I don't think there's any
Here it's
cross.
saying, I will fly with a qualified pilot or CFI or postpone if I'm there.
that's that list on the right hand side, Bob. So and this is very subjective and it's room for some wiggles in there if you'd like to. But it's a poor man's general aviation ORM checklist that I'm offering you. And if you'd like to use it for here, that's fine. So
Usual thing.
So you twist that you're setting criteria and if you violate it, you will address.
I'm trying to, you know, instead of just going off like regular AFR minimums, you might apply like more strict minimums on yourself.
Sure, yeah.
But they have more strict comfortable with them.
If there's any have to be busted, what do you do with you?
that is up to you.
Okay.
It's a personal
But
contract
I
between
trust
you and you.
Yes is the risk.
They help you trying to do get your arms around a purple cloud, very subjective things. And notice that when I gave you the ORM checklist, that's not just you and a subjective assessment. That's attempting to get your arms around the purple cloud and actually put numbers. Some people actually assign numbers to the green, yellow, and red, and realize that's for something that's going to mean millions of dollars, one way or the other, to the taxpayer or the Northrop Grumman. And they want to hold up a piece of paper in front of management and say, hey, here's why Duke didn't press the takeoff button today. Oh, by the way, should I fire it or should I lay him off or give him remedial treatment? Oh, we made this contract 2.5 years ago that this is what we're going to use for our criteria, even realizing that yeah, we're losing $2.5 million today because Duke didn't push the takeoff. If we got reset everything, all the ground resources, the test resources, the chase aircraft, all the things that were in place, not just here, but around the other side of the planet, all the coordination, all the personnel, all the man hours involved. Well, it's not the same for the set of checklists. The person is actually very, very low stress. All right, so in summary, you got this is the another wheel and a lot of the same skill sets or competencies around here. They've been divided into 3 in the value wheel. Communications, competency, and team competencies, and also technical background. All the things Bob covered today to go in towards the CRM, achieving that comfort level and situation awareness. All right, big spin goes. I think I'm on time. I'm trying to leave another 10-15 minutes for the so I'll keep this short. What I like to do is have you remember all the good things, but yeah, you'll come. Oh, yeah.
Just when you think you're out of your quiet.
This part of it, though, I'm going to tell you a scenario, a case study. Instead of like last year asking for go around the room, I'll keep this short. One case study out of your mind. And what I'd like you to do as I recount this story is have you look at this list. I got to recall the obstacles. Pretty good CRM, for paralysis, analysis, sensory overload, resignation, and so on. As I recount the story, kind of identify, oh, mentally, oh, that's another hazard or obstacle that gets, you know, just gonna keep that. Maybe notice the good things that, this is a story from over 40 years ago, so it's, every time I tell the story, it gets a little better in my favor, but there's a lot of bad things that is, yeah. Okay, so, I'll set up this, scenario here, this case study. Imagine, if you will, the two young Navy Lieutenant JGs, the youngest crew of the squadron, about to go on cruise, their first night, their first Westpac cruise, Indian Ocean cruise. It's on the USS Ranger, and they're both crewed together, same contact. And they thought it was because they were so shit hot. The two youngest guys that we put together. That hey, Skipper and the option was really like us. I think this were really good because they put us together. And then later on, we kind of concluded, well, maybe, just maybe it's because nobody else wanted to fly with us. Because we were so young, so junior. And it was probably a combination of both. But guess who our lead was? Our wingman was the lead of our section. We weren't section qualified yet. It was the skipper and the XO. One was the pilot, the other was the reader. We always flew with them. They kind of kept an eye on us. We were the junior guys. Well, for us, the good thing was that we've been flying with each other for a while. Before you go on cruise, they kind of team people up. So they get the good CRM thing going, front to back to front, and also within the section. And we can anticipate and keep everybody's needs, and you're working the checklist and the mission. And so this is Willie and I. Willie Texas Spence from Texas, and myself, and we're doing pretty good. We're feeling pretty good, but the air wing, the boat, and the battle group in it as a whole, it's not doing too good. We're pretty confident in ourselves and our CRM, but it's not just us. It's the whole air wing, the whole battle group. Before you leave San Diego and SoCal waters, head west, you got to pass a grade, and we're not passing our grade. In fact, I think our sister fighter squadron had a bad air pollution. The worst thing that can happen is they have to send an aircraft carrier that's 200 miles off the coast back into San Diego Bay to pick up an airplane and clean it on board. It was the maintenance so bad, or the crew couldn't qualify and get the airplane on board while they kept bouncing and they couldn't catch the hook. The boat was having troubles too. The wires were sagging. They couldn't keep each arresting gear cable engine underneath the flight deck was having trouble maintaining tension. All the Comcats were bouncing and doing hook skips. 8.7s were doing them. 8.6s were doing them, but the Comcats were not doing too good. It was a dashbox pressure and the tail hook that's got to be, if I remember right, 800 psi a minute. Otherwise, the thing bounces off. There's no way, even if you fly a first pass, you're not going to catch the wire. All kinds of things are going bad. We're losing, our grades are bad. CTAC is ready to, I found out later, they'll send you anyway. Because you got, for national security, you got to go. But they don't sign you off. And by the time you get to Pearl Harbor, you haven't gotten your grades back up. That will really, should have really hit the point. So we finally get to the op area north of Hawaii, and it's just still bad. And we get a briefing before we go on to this ops. We're 2 days out of Pearl Harbor. We still got to go for all these exercises. We got to make the all the competition with the threats that we can send out of Kenny Ellery Bay, all the Marines that could have come out and attack us. And they had some other Air Force assets that attack them. And so we got to pass all these tests. We're not passing our tests. We're getting worse. And so skipper's under pressure. The officer's under pressure. Well, you get two JGs. We don't, everything's fine for us. We have no idea what the pressure is. Just having a great time. Well, we do. And we're just doing our thing. And time comes the briefing, and we're about 2 days out of Pearl Harbor. We're trying to get the best grades we can, get the maximum points on each exercise. Skipper says, I'm tired of you guys coming back with so much gas. I want you to go and do as many intercepts, as many graded exercises as possible, and come back with enough for one pass and another downwind, and come back and then trick or treat on the ball. And I can't believe I'm hearing this in previous. Well, trick or treat means, hey, I get one more pass, boss, and if I miss it or somebody in the way, I'm on a, we're on big, we're not blue water rocks. Bingo, bingo fuel status, and we're on the way. Well, Lee and I look at each other in a brief, look at the skipper, look at each other, look at the skipper. I said, okay, you know what that means, and but he needs the points. He's got to satisfy the CAG ops, and we're still trying to pass these grades. Well, okay, so I'm setting up the scenario for you. Here we go. Everything's going fine, and our lead is first to the waist cat, and sure enough, the plane captain comes over, looks up at the skipper, he says, "You're down." He starts shaking his head. No, we're going. We're right behind him, so we're watching these. And he shakes his hand, like, "No, you're down." And he passes them off to the handler, and they start sitting them up on the power, start taxiing up. Get the hell out of the way. Get -2 up there, which is us, onto the catapult, and the skipper's just pounding his fist on the canopy because there's nothing wrong with this airplane that he knows of, but the plane captain saw something that was downing. He had to get the hell out of the way. So out he goes. We're in position, and off we go, fat, dumb, and happy, 2 Lieutenant JGs. We go off, do our mission, whatever we can do by ourselves. Skipper never makes it off the boat. So here we go, and we're well, no, that was another story. He's not down, but he goes off the boat. I'm mixing up stories. He goes off. We come out behind him. We fly a complete mission, and then when he comes back, we have a perfect interval, and we turn downwind, and the skipper and the XO shit in the gear. They don't get spun off the cat, but they shit in the gear, which means we get the wave off, that we get the flashing lights from the LSO platform, and Willie says, look down, see what happened. You know, boom, head on the canopy. I'm looking down. And sort of, I tell Willie, he said, yeah, they shit in gear. That's when the flew a perfect pass, but the 3-wire, you ever have your fishing gear line in your reel get all tangled up for no reason at all? That's what happened to his tail hook. The wire is just wrapped around it's a snarled mess. And there's just no way in a few minutes, even you bring the head back down again or up and down again, you're going to get it cleared by the time we come around. The A7s have already landed. The A6s are above us. They're ready to come down, but they're holding them up. We're still in the low hit pattern, coming around for next pass, but we're treat on the ball. 1 pass to go. Skipper briefed it that way. We did exactly what he wanted. We come back around, and I said, Willie, there's no way they're going to get him out of the landing area in time. We're going to be trick or treat on the ball. So I call it. Rio in the back seat does the clowns. I call trick or treat on the ball. Roger that, Tomcat. So we came around and called our state, and sure enough, wave it off. There's the flashing red lights. I look down again. He's still in the landing area. They're still trying to get the wire off of the hook. So off we go. I've already got the checklist open to the bingo profile, and the bingo location is Barbers Point, Hawaii, which the last brief I got was 240 miles away. Well, the checklist bingo profile only goes to 220. So we're already in an emergency situation and in trouble. And I said, you get on your profile right now. So here are the A6s in low orbit holding. So we kind of bust through their orbit and start in a left turn and start heading south. No tanker available.
Kenny Oil was closer.
And no, Kenny, oh, it would have been even farther because it's on the south east side of Wahoo.
Barber's Point is on the south.
And Barber's is just right there at Pearl Harbor on the west side. So off we go, and I'm doing the good CRM thing, right? I'm trying to stay ahead. I already got my checklist open even before we turned downwind. I said, we're going to be trick or treat on the ball. As I was saying that, I got my bingo profile checklist I'm opening up. And I said, Willie, you're going to have to be ready to get right on that profile. We practiced it in just a few months earlier for the first time, a long time since we were both in the RAG squadron, since we got out of school, several times, knowing that we're about to go on cruise, which requires you to go full power to get on up to altitude with those two big TF-30 fan engines. You're losing money going up, but you're almost manufacturing gas on the cruise and then the descent coming down. But you got to get up there in altitude. You got to get up high fast, and you got to go full power. Well, so anyway, we're trick or treat on the ball. I say goodbye to land launch frequency, which is the boss, and he said, so long. He didn't argue. I check in with strike, which is kind of like the analogous frequency for departure approach control on a boat. And said we're on the bingo profile at the Barbers, and he was terrific. I wasn't even thinking yet, but I had no idea what the weather was. And the weather was, in fact, blue skies, and he said calm winds, and have a good time, almost. We're on our way, but he says, I got a KA-7 for you. We're launching now. His vector is, this is after, we're all comfortable. We're on the profile. He's powered up and was right on the speed. He was a terrific pilot and got us on the bingo profile, and we're making money. We're on our way climbing through about 23,000 feet. He says, I got a KA-7 for you. Your vector is 350, I think it was 2830 miles. I'm looking at Willie. He's in the F-14 Tomcat. There's rear mirrors on either side, so you can keep an eye on me or check for threats. He looks in the left side rear. I can still see in his eyes today. He looks right in my eyes, and simultaneously we both go like this. So we're thinking the same way. And what came out of my mouth was, Roger, whatever the vector was for 28 miles, if he can catch me, we'll be glad to take it.
Yeah.
And all he said was, Roger. And oh, by the way, your weather is this and this, and I understand. So we just kept going. There's no way a KA-7 fully loaded with gas is going to climb up and catch us. So, in fact, our concern, the reason why we're so concerned about it is during the workups period and everything from between San Diego to Hawaii, the KA-7s were always going sour. You plug into them, you couldn't get transferred. You plug into them again, you couldn't get transferred. That's all we would need with our low fuel state is to go back and find this guy way down at 10,000 feet after we're all the way up here at 23,000 and climbing, and on our profile, feeling good, and then plug into him, and there's no gas. And then what do we do? And before that flight, the senior lieutenant commander, Rio, told me, he said, remember, Tom, the boat and CIC are always trying to kill you. And it was so fresh in my mind that I thought, hey, and I looked at Willie in the rearview mirror. He said, yeah, no, we're not taking it. We're not taking it. Well, it was a good thing because we're on our way. And okay, you cleared the switch Honolulu approach. Oh, by the way, your plane captain tells me to tell you, he thinks you blew your right main mount on the cat stroke an hour and a half ago, or an hour and 45 minutes ago. And we go, oh my God, okay. We've flown this entire mission and we didn't even know we blew the right tire, gear up and on our way and did our mission. So we got that going. So now I'm keeping an eye on my watch here, but anyway, we're on our profile and Willie does a good, well, he started to lower his nose a little bit. I said, get it back up, stay on profile. We got up to altitude and he pulls the power back gets slow airspeed. This was a late afternoon flight, and then we realized time to go. I'm like, what was it, Lumpy and High and the Mighty doing thing. I'm not actually doing the word processing with my word processing stick and doing the arithmetic. And yeah, it looks like we're going to make it. We're gonna make it, and we'll have about 800 pounds of fuel on arrival at Barbers. So, but now we realize, even though the weather's going to be good, it's going to be a night recovery. And oh, by the way, we have to assume now that we have a blown right tire. We got to take a trap on arrival, and so we got to be prepared. Then, if the thing starts to lean, we drag a wingtip and start catching on fire or something. We got to be ready to eject. He said, no, we'll be out of the envelope. It's supposed to be a 00C. No, Tom. We're going to be like this. We'll eject into the dirt. We won't get full seat man separation, let alone of good. So we're going to be condemned to ground egress, which means I need to blow. I said, I'll count on you to blow the canopy, and then we'll step out graciously and slide on down the wing. Hopefully we don't catch on fire. So this is all getting exciting here where it was kind of calm before. There was nothing wrong with us, nothing wrong with our airplane. We're on a bingo profile. We're just low on fuel. But now we got a plan for this. So the CRN thing's working pretty good. We got strike working for us. They called us in to Barbers. The Barbers, we got our own squadron deck detachment there that's ready to catch us. So we're feeling pretty good about ourselves, with the exception of this wrestling landing we got. We arrived and things are going good, and I could see the totalizer just stopped. And it almost seemed like we were regaining fuel in the descent. Those TF-30s are great for fuel consumption on the way down. And he says, if you don't mind, I think I'm just going to take it and we'll switch the tower here off of Honolulu approach. I'll just cross midfield, turn left downwind, and land and be landed going to the west. There's an east-west runway there. You take a trap. And sure enough, we take the trap. But before we, as we're turning downwind, we look down and we see the emergency vehicles. I mean, it was like the whole airfield was lit up with all these red lights. Just watching that crash recovery thing at Washington recently at the Reagan National. All those lights all over the place when you had the mid-air collision. It reminded me of this story. It was just like that. He couldn't see the runway. There were so many emergency vehicles all over the airfield. They were obliterating the runway lights. And all he could do was come up on tower, and they said, "When you turn up the runway lights, we can't see the runway." So we're turning downwind, and boom, here come the runway lights. So yeah, well, said, "Oh, I can see it now." It's always swirling red lights all over the place. We turn downwind, and we're all ready to a right remount. Nothing happened. Take the trap, but we're used to landing on a carrier where it's a very violent situation where you just get caught in the straps. Here, the landing gear, resting gear on the runway is very benign. At first, we thought we missed the hook. We did a hook flap, but no, and then we slowed down. Everything was fine. Came to a stop, opened it up, got out quietly. Usually, we're both exhausted. We get down there, we're talking to our ground crew, and looking at the airplane, looking at the right name out, everything's fine with the airplane. Everything's fine with us. And then I asked my plane captain, I said, what's with all the emergency vehicles? I mean, they're all over the place. All you needed was one fire truck. Oh, you didn't hear it? They didn't tell you on the radio? It made it on the local radio channel. They're broadcasting it all over the place. That disabled combats coming into Barbers Point, and it's carrying nuclear bombs. So we made it through the entire community has been alerted. Here it is about 8 o'clock at night. And I'm thinking, oh, what else needs to happen? Well, the story's not over. We get in the pickup truck and we're ready to conk out for the night. We get to the DOQ room where story and that's what I'm sorry. There's no room, sorry, sir. You know, and all we have is '06 orders. So I'm starting to get a little bit. And so this argument goes on until finally the commander in charge of the BOQ, when it comes in, and just says, give him the '06 orders. We go in and I'm ready. I had to take a nap before I could be done and take my boots off. I'm still in my flight there. I was ready to give you a bed and a really nice quarters. Yeah, it's really nice. I'm getting ready to lay down. And there's a pounding at the door. And that same lieutenant commander's got a confidential message in his hand. It says, classified overhead report time. Be there by check in by 10:30 p.m. Here it is. It's almost 8:30 at night. The airplane's fine. We're fine, but we're exhausted, right? We got some management interference going on. So I walk down the hall and Willie's already got the gear off, and I still got my gear on. He's got his gear off. He's got his boots off. He's ready to conk out for the night. Either one of us is eaten or had anything for chow, and we got a classified message. That's an order. That's a direct order. You got to comply. Well, we called the guy at the flight line or announcement and said, yeah, we got the airplane turned already. We got the message through. We can be ready to start the engine in about 15 minutes for you.
Oh, this was back on the ship.
We get the classified message for the ship.
In order to go back to the
In order to go back to the ship.
They want their airplane back. This is bad juju. Talk about passing your test. This is not good for passing the grade.
Well, you haven't even had a Mai Tai yet? I'm moving on.
So the story's not over yet.
Oh, God.
And I'm telling Willie, I said, hey, I'm not ready.
You don't have
I'm
to
not,
when you got to the-
I'm not ready to go flying again. How about you? He's absolutely not. I've had enough of the day. And this wouldn't have, I'm going to start talking about the schedule. This wasn't happening. They let us have our extra 500 pounds of gas like we usually did. Just being two Lieutenant JG, not know-it-alls. We don't belong to service. So we get the gear back on. We got a confidential message again. Say, thanks for the '06 orders. Out the door we go. Get in the truck. We're out there. And so we're just kind of doing this eye contact with each other and check our heads again. And we can't fly a direct order, but we don't have to push the takeoff button. You know what I mean? So we got to the point where I start the pre-flight typically as a Rio up on top. So I climb up first and then throw my bag in the back seat. It's ready to go. The deck crew was terrific. They had the airplane turned, refueled, ready to go. And I get my foot up on the lower rung of the ladder. Just as I did, the deck Hawaiian Sea officer in charge says, hey, you're canceled for the day. So actually, I got more on the story, but that's all I'm going to share today. That was the end of the story. How many CRM bad things occurred, obstacles? I like to say the one I dwell on is the management, with the loss of SA and certainly the comfort factor was on my list. There were points there where resignation started to set in. I guess we could have done more risk assessment beforehand, but the deviation from our plan and certainly that occurred. Anyway, that's my story. I did want to spend some time with ERP. That wasn't the case, but it was close. Okay, how do we spell ERP? Bob and I did some conferring before showtime this morning, and did in fact I think update the ERP, but I do want to send my copy around to make sure that everything on there is correct. One in the airplane matches what's on there, so make sure to go in that you're pass that back to the else. What do you do in an emergency? If you're in the Rainier Squadron, and we have a terrific ERP composed by Bob, and it's retained in the airplane's backseat, so you got to see it when you get in the airplane. But we don't want you taking it with you when you go flying. So put it out on the table. And here is a scenario that we used last year that we like to use again. Sitting at the desk, and may not be a pilot. So this might be Rich. Rich is sitting at the desk. He's just sold some rides. He has some family members with him, and the other family members are going flying in the back seat. And he was watching what's going on. And maybe you got a volunteer number 2. That's going to be Bob. Bob's going to back you up here, Rich. Okay. So here we go. Scenario number 1. You saw the CEO earlier in the day, but he's at the hangar working on his float pool. The XO is on travel supporting a flying task. You're not sure about the rest of the staff, so it's just the 2 of you, Bob and Rich. You watch the airplane take off as Arlington, runway 16, but it's not climbing so well, so it's taking off to the south, Rich.
Normal.
Yeah. That's true too. As you watch in horror, the airplane passes below the trees, up into the runway. You're not sure what happened after that, but you know you got to do something. And their family members are staying right next to you, or getting a tour by somebody over here, looking at the museum setup display. Describe your actions. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? What's it mother to do? Well, what if you don't remember anything out of today? Remember 16. And where'd Rich go?
Rich went to the bathroom.
Immediate action.
So here's where I'm going to ask Bob to help me out. Page 16. What is that, Bob?
So there's a nice yellow tab there. It says immediate action checklist. So you open that. And it's got a table of stuff to do. So it says call 911 if required. Complete the emergency notification worksheet. It tells you where that is. Start a journal. So get some paper.
Here.
We got extra people.
Pass this up
Dave,
for
would
me.
you take
Take one.
the journal for me? There you go. Yeah. So that's, he's gonna hand around the thing. You're back.
Get a bio mitigation.
There we go. We're working on that right now. You got it? Oh, that's the thing, yeah.
So that starts you off. But you need to have
Now you
up-to-date
can-
information in your ERP. And that's section 4. It has all those contacts that Bob was just talking about. And here you go. Here's the page 16. Remember page 16 and the tab. They're all tabbed in that 3-ring binder. Bob's just talking about it here. As you'd expect, the immediate action is 911. What anyone would do, even if you didn't have an ERP, is get the emergency responders going in the direction that you think it needs to go, and then start working through your checklist and notifications. And then the worksheet. What did you just say, Bob? Is in section 4.
With the numbers?
Yeah.
Yeah, section 4. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And here is the log or checklist that you can see, that's in section 3. And here's the contact list that we need to make sure is up to speed. That's the one I asked Logan to pass around. Check it and pass it around to who else? The XO needs to look at it if you didn't already earlier this morning, Simon.
Yeah, I think we're all updated.
We're all updated. Okay.
And that's the one here in the aircraft, or it'll be at the, at the rides desk if we're giving rides.
So what I'd like you to do is that piece of paper I'm handing around, is it back here?
Yeah.
Okay, I need that as the OPSO, and so I have that in my life. That's there. You got it for me, thank you. Many hands make light work, and that's what Bob's trying to get across from last year is making a team effort. Don't feel like you're by yourself, Rich, even though you are. Get some people on the phone. And get these other checklists going that are all embedded into the ERP.
So the OPSO has a checklist, the CO, the XO, there's a bunch of, and so if you're one of those people, you should be familiar with your checklist.
Yes, please.
Can you go back to the page 16 slide?
Sure.
And that's the one we handed around. Did you get a copy of that?
There's extra copies here.
Well, I was just gonna point out for, one of the immediate actions is move passenger friends to a squadron meeting room. One thing when we set up any event, we're gonna be talking to the organizers to establish a place that's going to be at other airports and facilities. So, here, obviously, we would bring inside to our hangar and our little officer area. But if we're at Skagit or at a different airport, we will work with those organizers to have that place available to go to in any case, and the volunteers on the ground will know where that place is before we start doing events or operations.
So do we have like a debt checklist when we go detached to Skagit to give rides that tells us to do that, to coordinate that, or do we have to remember?
Not yet. I'm sort of as I'm working with the organizers and contacting them, I'm trying to sort of get set myself up of what I'm asking for each time.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, that'd be really great. So whoever's running the rides desk has got this. Okay, yep, chip. We got all that done.
I sort of have an idea of what I want, I'm learning on the fly at the time. But when I really get it nailed down, I'll sort of have a checklist of exactly what I'm asking each organizer.
What started off as is basically an idea off what we used to do with the music industry, which is the writer contract. And so it's what we require to come there, but then it started evolving into what details, things like that.
Awesome.
So Simon was I tasked him with taking that, and he's just kind of grown as he's dealing with all these events. He's adding to it, so it's kind of like a living document right now and being developed to be into what we need like that.
That'd be great. And that can fit into your SOP.
Not mine, it's the entire.
Well, our SOP.
Yeah. One of which is what we're talking about here. That's got to be in there. Is kind of like an annex to the ERP, which has to be by its nature consolidated and capable of being used quickly and undertaking on a debt. So, but yeah, all of this would be captured into the squadron operating procedure internal to us, Rainier Squadron, with heavy emphasis and linkages to the headquarters CAF. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, one of the things that we trained on for emergency actions in the air show industry was you make sure that nobody talks to the media or posts anything, except there's one guy who's the point of contact, and it's usually whoever the incident.
Well, in the CAF world, it's lay a block. That's that's everything. It's part of it. It's buried in this checklist.
And that is coming up next month with all the ground
But you
stuff.
need to make sure that none of your people who just saw that or on Facebook posting it or calling, that is the news.
Be in the ERP, and it's actually
I got
coming slide.
I got to exercise on this with SJ this last year when we had the new tech thing.
Yeah.
And it was really helpful, but same thing, we're gonna keep everyone isolated, the whole, no posting things, like that.
So can you go back one slide?
Sure.
So for the officers, the CO, XO, you're also supposed to have a copy available to you somewhere, printed on your computer, on the Google Drive somewhere. We need to make sure that you have that, because there could be a scenario where the actual hard book ERP isn't in use.
Yeah.
Like I go on a ride and I crash, and I left the ERP in the airplane or something, or it's sitting here in the hangar, and you're a long ways from the hangar. So if you don't already have a copy, you should make sure you get that. I think I mailed it to you.
Yeah, I have a copy saved on my phone, and there's in Google Drive. There's a copy available too.
Yeah. I should probably go in and update the copy on the Google Drive with the latest numbers. So
There's contact information.
yeah, I'll go do that.
Which is your intent anyway, but in the meantime, we're still legal to go with a pen and ink exchange.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to do pen and ink, if you will.
There you go. That should be in that version.
So I have a question to kind of piggyback on that. And I kind of ran into this myself last time when I took the plane out, and my friend and I looked at Scott, no one else was here. Stoney taught me that the ERP says here. Do we have, or do we want to designate a specific spot in the hangar that if we're just doing local stuff out of our hangar, whether people are here or not, to leave the ERP? And then the secondary question for that is, we filled out a manifest for that flight and left it behind, and I was kind of left thinking, well, where do I put the manifest? What do I do with it when I'm done and we've returned? So is there some kind of standardized spot that I should be putting that as well?
No, but there should be.
I was thinking as simple as we throw a plastic file folder on the wall in the office and just put stuff in there when we're out or something.
It used to be, we talked about this just a little earlier today. We used to have that brown table next to the aircraft, and we put it there. Well, now we talked about the rides table, the entrance up at the front. We talked about leaving it there for right now. I do like your idea of having the files or whatnot. It might actually be a good spot. We have our cabinet back there. That's where we put, because we're able to have that as our central thing. But
I'm just a strict idea. And I had in my head as just sort of plastic file folded on the wall. Throw the ERP, throw your manifest in there, and then maybe have a second one that's completed manifest that still need to be filed. Or I don't know what they have, what we do with them when we come back, but need to be filed by whoever.
We need to establish that too. Is that ops that keeps those on file for a certain length of time and then trashes them, or what?
let's talk more about it later on.
I agree.
Because
We need to keep copies.
no,
It's not required as far as I know. And,
no, but
until I get past that month where I do my ops report, I wouldn't need it. So,
I figure if we're trying to,
talk about this.
if we're doing the assessments and we're trying to, get our members to fly the airplanes more, we're probably gonna have these scenarios more often where, maybe we don't have a full staff here and the airplane's out flying, so I think it'd be good to have a standardized spot.
and that's your ops though. I think I got the CO's backing on this. I do not want to have a situation where we're all set to go, everything's ready, got all the resources, you can execute a flight safely. But you can't go because you don't have a mother may I from the OPSO or the CO because they can't be tracked down. I want us to be self-contained here so that we don't miss a flight opportunity.
Well, that was another thing I kind of had an issue with on that last flight, is I couldn't find any paper, manifests. And I went on the CAF website briefly.
It should have been on the clipboard, but that may not.
So I found an old one that had some random notes written from here, so I flipped it over, if that's get filled out, but that could be something too, if we had mouthful.
As far as I know, it's still lying inside the ERP.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do with it.
I don't know what to do with it either.
So our paper copies we have a master. Someone who's not here right now took and moved a bunch of stuff and track down. So we'll make a bunch more copies for the time and we'll help file stuff.
Right, talk about the checklist, yours truly, the OPSO's got a lot of paperwork to do afterwards, does it have to go through TSP, and then certainly the, CAF, is gonna wanna help, so they need all the information as well, so I have to give them, filling out that form. Other scenarios, we just, some of the folks that already talked about, a rental flight, missing airplane, et cetera, that would require still an ERP to be executed. You gotta be ready and prepared to do it. Where is it kept? We just talked about that. In the airplane, you can find it in this location in the Google Drive. And you see our codes and our copies. Everybody goes to have copies. That's what we do. We take the emergency recovery plan out the airplane and meet here.
Yeah, but I'm saying.
Being an extra.
So in the case like where we're
Sure.
only
No, really not.
left it in there.
Here's some of the guidelines then, stay organized, get help, don't gossip, like, we mentioned already. Let's try to keep it one point of contact, that is going to be the CO. That's the destination DOT. And then follow the process. Time to read it as well before it has an active happens, get help. Don't try to do it all by yourself, even though you are by yourself. We'll do that CRM thing. Okay, this is the last slide, and we have something that Bob included last year that I think is extremely valuable. Some of us have been around the block a few times, have been through this, and it would have been really nice if we had our own training go get. And it's not that great, so the next one I went on, we came back without shooting, firing a shot, being shot at, we lost 2 airplanes and 5 dead. So we had our share of emotional situations on that in that air wing of that cruise. It would have been nice to have this kind of training or this kind of happening. There's going to be a lot of grief to go around, not just within the airport, but the families. So, there are support services out there that give that kind of training. They have one person that I know of that's Bob that has been through that. Is that correct?
I've never heard of that. He says, this is yours one. I've never heard that.
You put this together.
So we do have an official member in our squadron. Lena, who was actually trained on all this.
Yeah, she was excellent on it, and she always goes fast, always off in that, so.
Me too, I'm trained to serve eventually.
I figured, I figured.
And then certainly the CAF has had its share of issues the last couple of years too, that we've worked through. Maybe that sorts in the future. Counseling and training, that one of us needs to step up to that floor, for family members or visitors or somebody after the fact, weeks, months later. Really needs somebody with Tikio has a manual on assistance, motion assistance training as well. And that concludes the work piece.
Thank you so much. So we're gonna wrap up fast. I'm just gonna say that I've entered the training for CRN and ground school for everybody here. Except Mark, you're not, I guess you don't have a transition letter yet, so.
I used to have one, but I'm sure anymore.
So I got a record of this, and if we get to actually flying, we can figure it out. But everybody else I had it, so they're good for that.
We'll see if I can either get a refreshed or, we'll just redo it.
By the way, I think, hours.